Chapter 868. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had never thought of the conjecture that God Master He Yu had raised. The two of them thought for a while and nodded in agreement, as they felt that it made sense. Ji Tianqing said seriously, 20 days ago, 2 demon commanders kidnapped my father. They wanted to use my father as a hostage to force me to submit to them. I have fought with the 2 demon commanders before. I have some understanding of their strength and methods. One of them is called Tu Run. He is the weakest of the 6 demon commanders. He is only a LV1 soul cultivation stage cultivator. He is not a threat at all. However, the other one, Zhou Shuai, is a LV3 or LV4 soul cultivation stage cultivator. He is a vicious and treacherous person. If they have a demon Dao magical treasure, it must be in Zhou Shuai's hands. Unfortunately, I am still no match for Zhou Shuai. There is no way I can kill him. Although he had reached LV8 Sky Origin stage, he was still no match for Zhou Shuai. Unless he had the help of Burial of Heaven's soul avatar, he could only exchange a few blows with Zhou Shuai. Unfortunately, Burial of Heaven had been in a deep slumber and could not help at all. God Master He Yu thought for a while, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He sneered and said, "Leave that Zhou Shuai to me. Previously, I had to stay in the Monarch Mansion to take care of the Monarch Mansion and the Central State. I could not deal with the 2 demon commanders personally. Since the root cause of the demonic goose chaos is likely to be the 2 demon marshals, then this seat will personally take action and settle them with lightning speed." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were excited when they heard that God Master He Yu was going to deal with them. They were looking forward to it. That's great. As long as God Master He Yu is willing to deal with them, the 2 demon commanders are no match for you. Rumor has it that God Master He Yu has reached the half-step primordial soul stage. You are invincible among those below the primordial soul stage. If you are going to deal with them personally, we will be able to feast our eyes on your peerless demeanor. Divine Master He Yu looked at Ji Tianqing and said calmly, "Although your words sound like you're trying to flatter him, you're basically right. As long as I can find the 2 demon marshals, they will definitely die." But the crux of the problem was that the 2 demon marshals were very cunning. They knew the Emperor Manor's power and methods, so they didn't have any direct contact with the Emperor Manor. They're hiding in the dark, and through their spies all over the cities, they're clearly aware of our movements. If I were to search for them, they would definitely flee at the mere sight of me. To God Tier Master He Yu, not being able to find the 2 demon commanders was the biggest headache. If the 2 demon marshals dared to fight him head-on, they would die without a doubt. There would be no possibility of escape. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. An idea popped into his mind, and he immediately had an idea. Divine Master Black Feather, I have an idea that will definitely lure the 2 demon marshals out. Divine Teacher He Yu and Yun Yao were shocked. They looked at him with anticipation. What idea? Hurry up and tell me. Ji Tianqing revealed a mocking cold smile and said in a playful tone, "The 2 demon marshals came to Central State under the orders of the Demon Emperor. Other than carrying out the demonic goo plan, they also want to capture me and bring me back to the Northern Desert Demon Nest. They have spies all over Central State City, so they might already know that I've returned to Central State. Since that's the case, then I'll act as bait and lure the 2 demon marshals out. Sir God Tier Master, follow me in the dark. When the 2 demon marshals appear, we can capture them all in one go." God Tier Master Black Feather considered for a moment, then nodded and said, "This is a good idea, we can give it a try. I won't follow you in the dark, so as to avoid leaving any traces and letting them know. To be safe, I'll hide in your domain lord's golden seal, so they won't be able to detect me." Ji Tianqing stared blankly for a moment, then revealed a face full of smiles. He said with heartfelt admiration, "God Tier Master Black Feather, you're truly sinister." Cough cough. God Tier Master Black Feather pretended to cough. His expression didn't change as he said in a serious manner, "This isn't sinister. This is called wisdom." Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao both revealed smiles. In the evening, the setting sun shone down. Central State City was peaceful and auspicious. It could be considered peaceful recently. However, there were grievous news coming from Central State City every day, causing the citizens to feel depressed, filled with worry and worry. In the depths of the divine steel forest, at the entrance of the Monarch Manor, a light suddenly flashed and a figure appeared. This person was wearing a white robe, handsome and heroic in high spirits. It was Ji Tianqing. He left the monarch manor alone and flew into the sky as fast as lightning, flying towards the South City gate. Only he and God-tier Master Black Feather participated in the plan to kill the demon marshals. Yun Yao's current strength was too weak, so it wasn't suitable for her to participate. Not only could she not help, it was easy for accidents to happen. Therefore, Yun Yao stayed in the monarch manor, silently waiting for news. As for God-tier Master Black Feather, he had already hidden in the treasure space inside the seal of mountains and rivers, meditating and resting, waiting for his prey to take the bait. Ji Tianqing flew over Central State City's sky, quickly leaving the South City gate, flying towards the South Mountain Range. On the surface, it looked like he was in a hurry, his brows filled with anxiety, as if he had some urgent matter to attend to in the south. When he left Central State City, there were several spies of the demon race in the city, secretly using a secret technique, sending out secret messages. And all of this, although Ji Tianqing didn't see it, it was all within his expectations. Very quickly, 2 hours passed. The curtain of night had already fallen. Ji Tianqing was more than 800 li away from Central State City, speeding through the night sky. He seemed to be focused on hurrying, but in fact, he was secretly releasing his spiritual sense to investigate the surrounding movements. Unknowingly, another 4 hours passed. It was late at night. The stars in the sky were sparse, the starlight somewhat dim. At this time, Ji Tianqing was flying in a vast and majestic mountain range. This place was very desolate. Within a radius of 500 li, there wasn't a single city. Suddenly, in the night sky in front of him, 2 dark red blood lights lit up, cutting through the night sky as fast as lightning. The 2 dark red beams of light were extremely fast. They were heading straight for Ji Tianqing, and the distance between them and him was rapidly closing. Ji Tianqing immediately sensed that something was wrong, hurriedly slowing down his flying speed, looking at those 2 blood lights with a heart full of vigilance. After a short 10 breaths, those 2 blood lights sped over, stopping in the night sky 1,000 meters in front of him. Swish, swish. After the blood lights faded, 2 tall and sturdy figures appeared. The 2 newcomers were tall and sturdy demon race experts. Their appearances and auras were extremely ferocious. The demon race expert on the left had a head of purple hair, wore a purple robe, and wore a necklace of skulls around his neck. He was one of the 2 demon marshals, the strongest one, Marshal Zhua. The demon race expert beside Marshal Zhua had strangely long arms. His body was like a large ape, and he wore a scarlet cloak. His upper body was bare, his feet were bare, and there was only a flood dragon leather skirt around his waist, his entire body emitting a ferocious aura. He was the 6th-ranked demon marshal, Tu Ren. The 2 demon marshals coldly stared at Ji Tianqing, their mouths revealing a cold grin. Chapter 869. Zhua Shuai and Tu Ren's tone was full of mockery. They were confident that they would win. The 2 of them separated and surrounded Ji Tianqing. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing saw the 2 demon marshals appear out of nowhere. He did not panic at all. He even sneered and said mockingly, "You have a lot of spies. You know I left the city so soon." Tu Ren sneered, "Ha. You idiot. Don't you think it's too late for you to realize it now?" Ji Tianqing looked at him from the corner of his eyes and curled his lips in disdain. Tu Ren, it seems like you've forgotten the pain after your wounds have healed. Have you forgotten the lesson from last time? At the mention of what happened last time, Tu Ren immediately recalled his miserable appearance when he was seriously injured. He was instantly filled with rage, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing, you damn bastard. Don't be so proud. Bun Shuai will never forget what happened last time. You walked right into my trap tonight. How dare you leave the city to die? Bun Shuai will cut you into pieces and kill you. Ji Tianqing was not angry. Instead, he sneered even more. He even looked at Tu Ren with pity. Tisk tsk. You idiot. You don't even know you are about to die. How pitiful. Tu Ren was enraged by the humiliation. His eyes were blazing with flames as he growled in a low voice. Ji Tianqing, you are looking for death. If Bun Shuai doesn't cut you into pieces. Before he could finish, Zhua Shuai's expression changed, and he shouted in a gloomy tone, Ji Tianqing. Last time, you were severely injured by Bun Shuai. You ran away like a stray dog. Now you dare to talk nonsense to Bun Shuai. Do you have something to rely on? It has only been half a month since we last met. You have reached level 8 of Sky Origin Stage. You are indeed a monster. No wonder the Demon King thinks highly of you. However, with your meager strength, you'll still die tonight. Zhuo Shuai was not as easily angered as Tu Run, nor would he be blinded and lose his rationality. Seeing Ji Tianqing's fearless attitude, Zhuo Shuai guessed that he must have something to rely on. However, Zhuo Shuai only guessed part of the reason, and could not guess the real reason. Ji Tianqing looked at Zhuo Shuai and sneered. Zhuo Shuai, you are smart enough, unlike Tu Run, who is so pitiful and stupid. Unfortunately, it's too late for you to understand this now. Tonight, the ones who will die are you. As soon as he finished speaking, he summoned his Dharma treasure, the seal of mountains and rivers. The seal of mountains and rivers appeared out of thin air, floating in the night sky in front of him, shining with a dazzling golden light. Shua! After the seal of mountains and rivers was opened, a figure as cold as an iceberg with a majestic aura appeared in the night sky. This was a black-robed expert with a mysterious and powerful aura. He was divine teacher Heiyu. As soon as he appeared, Zhuo Shuai and Tu Rin sensed an extremely strong sense of danger, and their faces immediately changed. Both of them stared at divine teacher Heiyu, their pupils constricted, and their expressions turned solemn. Who are you? It seems that Ji Tianqing is relying on you. Divine teacher Heiyu looked at the two demon marshals indifferently and uttered these 5 words coldly. The imperial residence. Heiyu. These 5 words were like a bolt from the blue, causing the two demon marshals' faces to change drastically. Their bodies froze on the spot. Both of them widened their eyes, revealing a fearful expression. There was even a flash of fear in their eyes. Heiyu? You are divine teacher Heiyu from the imperial residence? You are the grand divine teacher from the imperial residence? The Heiyu who is invincible under the immortal soul stage? Zhuo Shuai and Tu Rin panicked and looked at Heiyu cautiously. They secretly gathered their strength and were ready to turn and run at any time. They had done their homework before coming to the central region. They had a good understanding of the experts from all the major forces, especially the imperial residents, which made them extremely fearful. Before coming to the central region, the Demon King had solemnly warned them not to confront the divine teacher from the imperial residence. Otherwise, they would definitely die. Now, the grand divine teacher from the imperial residence was standing in front of them. How could they not be shocked? How could they not be fearful? Tu Ren's face was extremely ugly. His heart was filled with fear and retreating. He only wanted to turn and run immediately. Zhuo Shuai was still calm and steady. He looked at divine teacher Heiyu seriously and sneered. Hee. So this is your trick to lure us out. Ben Shuai did not expect the grand divine teacher from the imperial residence to be so sinister and despicable. In order to ambush Ben Shuai, you actually hid in Ji Tianqing's magic treasure. You have really disgraced the imperial residence. Divine teacher Heiyu was not angry. He looked at Zhuo Shuai indifferently, as if he was looking at a dead man. If I kill you, no one will know what happened tonight. What is there to be disgraced about? Zhuo Shuai was speechless. His heart was filled with anger. He shouted with a cold face, Heiyu, the imperial residence has never interfered in worldly affairs. Why do you ignore your status and come personally? As long as you let us go, Ben Shuai swears in the name of the Demon King that I will immediately evacuate the demon tribe from the central region city. I will never be an enemy of the imperial residence in the future. Zhuo Shuai had obviously admitted defeat and was pleading with divine teacher Heiyu. However, divine teacher Heiyu looked at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, say no more. Since I am here, you must die. Not to mention you, even if the ancient demon king came personally, he would not be qualified to negotiate with the imperial residence. As he finished speaking, he slowly raised his arms. His body surged with white divine soul light, and 9 blazing divine soul dharma eyes appeared behind him. The 9 divine soul dharma eyes shone with dazzling white light and formed a circle. They were like 9 stars that slowly rotated and emitted a mysterious and vast aura. At this moment, Heiyu seemed to be one with the heavens and earth. He controlled the heavens and earth. Zhuo Shuai and Tu Rin saw that he was about to attack. Their expressions changed, and they did not dare to talk nonsense. They turned and ran without hesitation. Swoosh! Swoosh! Both of them turned into dark red blood light and exploded with their fastest speed. They were like lightning streaking across the night sky as they fled into the distance. However, divine teacher Heiyu stood in the night sky with a cold expression. His black robe fluttered as he shouted, "You want to run now? It's too late." Black feathers covered the sky. As he shouted, The 9 divine soul Dharma eyes immediately released endless white divine soul light that spread in all directions. Swoosh! The white divine soul light turned into a blazing white light curtain that covered the sky and covered a radius of 100 miles in the blink of an eye. This area was sealed by the blazing white light curtain and turned into Divine Teacher He Yu's divine soul territory. In this territory, he was the ruler of heaven and earth. He was an invincible existence. Zhuo Shuai and Tu Ren had just escaped 20 miles away when they saw the divine soul territory formed. Their eyes were filled with despair. It's over. We can't escape. Chapter 870. Zhuo Shuai and Tu Ren looked at God-tier Blackfeather cautiously as they secretly accumulated their power. Both of them were surging with thick killing intent and burning with blood-red flames. They knew how powerful God-tier Blackfeather was, so they didn't hold back and unleashed their strongest power, revealing their true forms. Blood Butcher's true form appear. Illusion Demon's true form. As Tu Ren and Zhuo Shuai roared, their figures flickered and transformed into ferocious demonic beasts that were as huge as mountains. Roar! Tu Ren's true form was a huge dark red beast that was 1,000 meters wide. It looked like a toad and was covered with dark red lumps and pustules. It had 2 rows of sharp barbs on its back, and 6 broad black wings sprouted from its ribs. Zhuo Shuai's true form looked like a ferocious 3-headed demonic dragon. It was black and covered with scales and carapace. It even had barbs and wings. Of course, it only looked like a demonic dragon. It wasn't a real dragon and didn't have the domineering aura of a real dragon. It looked ferocious and had an evil aura. It was covered in dark demonic mist. Zhuo Shuai and Tu Ren wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. Before God-tier Blackfeather could attack, they took the initiative to attack. Sky Shatter. Tu Ren opened his flat mouth and spat out a huge ball of dark red blood light. It was like a cannonball that flew towards God-tier Blackfeather. Bloodbath Dragon. Zhuo Shuai flapped his wings and rushed towards God-tier Blackfeather. He extended his 6 pairs of huge demonic dragon claws and grabbed at God-tier Blackfeather. God-tier Blackfeather was fearless facing the attacks of 2 demonic marshals. His expression didn't change at all. When the house-sized blood-red light ball flew towards him, his figure flashed and teleported 1,000 meters away. He easily dodged the blood-red light ball's attack. Bang! The blood-red light ball pierced through the sky and landed on the blinding white light screen. There was an earth-shattering explosion. However, the blood-red light ball exploded. The blinding white light screen only trembled twice before it returned to normal. There wasn't even a crack. Immediately after, Zhuo Shuai pounced towards him again. 6 house-sized demonic dragon claws grabbed at him. God-tier Blackfeather once again teleported 1,000 meters away and instantly appeared beside Zhuo Shuai. He raised both his fists and punched out. A pair of gigantic white fist shadows appeared and struck Zhuo Shuai with a force of several million kilograms. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, Zhuo Shuai was sent flying. He flew for dozens of miles before crashing into the blazing white light screen. Zhuo Shuai's mountain-like body actually distorted and deformed. The scales and carapace under its ribs were all shattered, and more than 10 of its bones were broken. 2 of its wings were also broken. The wounds were 2 huge pits, revealing the black demonic bones inside. Black demonic blood kept gushing out. The pain caused it to scream miserably. It roared angrily and struggled with all its might. However, after tumbling a few dozen times in the air, it still couldn't find its direction, and its soul was still in a daze. After all, Divine Master He Yu's punch contained a powerful soul energy that had injured his soul. Seeing this scene, Tu Ren was stunned on the spot. His eyes were filled with deep fear. Even Zhuo Shuai couldn't withstand a single attack from God-tier Blackfeather and was instantly heavily injured. With his strength, how could he fight against God-tier Blackfeather? Just as Tu Ren was in a daze, God-tier Blackfeather waved his palms and formed a seal. He controlled the power of the realm and released millions of black feathers towards Tu Ren. Each black feather was more than 3 feet long. They looked like black feathers. However, in reality, each black feather was formed by the power of the realm. They were sharper and more powerful than sword radiance. They were indestructible. Tens of thousands of black feathers flew towards Tu Ren at the same time and instantly surrounded him. Xiao xiao xiao. They began to strangle him. Instantly, with Tu Ren as the center, the area within a radius of 5 miles was turned into a pitch-black mass. Tu Ren's gigantic body had an incomparably strong defense. It was even tougher than a magic weapon. However, in front of the indestructible black feathers, he was extremely weak. The tens of thousands of black feathers slashed at him crazily, causing his flesh and blood to fly everywhere. He let out a heart-wrenching scream. In a short span of 10 breaths, his body was cut into millions of pieces. Mixed with his black demonic blood, they splattered everywhere and rained down from the sky. Tu Ren was immediately cut into a skeleton by the black feathers. However, this skeleton did not last long before it was crushed into countless pieces by the black feathers that filled the sky. Swoosh! A ball of blazing white light the size of a washbasin flew out from the sky, filled with bone fragments, and fled into the distance in a panic. That ball of blazing white light was Tu Ren's divine soul. Although his physical body had been destroyed by the black feathers, his divine soul still existed. As long as his divine soul could escape and recuperate for hundreds of years, he would be able to return to his original state. However, the area within a radius of 100 miles was sealed off by the blazing white light. This area was under the control of God Tyr Blackfeather. There was no way he could escape. Just as Tu Ren's divine soul was desperately trying to escape, God Tyr Blackfeather's cold voice rang out from not far behind him. "Demon, your time of death has come." God Tyr Blackfeather caught up and waved his palms expressionlessly. He released a blazing white light pillar that blasted towards Tu Ren's divine soul. Tu Ren could not dodge in time and was powerless to resist. He was instantly hit by the blazing white light pillar. Bang! Following a dull explosion, Tu Ren's divine soul was shattered into pieces on the spot. It exploded into white light fragments that filled the sky and sprinkled down from the sky. A dignified demon commander, a great expert of the spirit refinement realm, was turned into ashes just like that. He was killed by God Tyr Blackfeather on the spot. From the beginning of the battle to Tu Ren's death, only a dozen breaths of time had passed. Tu Ren, who was so aggressive before, was as weak as a chick in front of God Tyr Blackfeather. He was killed in 2 or 3 moves. Only now did the heavily injured Zhuai wake up. He hid at the edge of God Tyr Blackfeather's domain and looked at God Tyr Blackfeather with fear. He witnessed the entire process of Tu Ren's death with his own eyes. His heart was filled with shock and fear. When he saw God Tyr Blackfeather flying towards him with a murderous aura, he immediately let out a roar of grief and indignation. God Tyr Blackfeather, don't go too far. If you dare to kill Zhuai, His Majesty the Demon Emperor will not forgive the monarch residents and will not let Central State City go. If Zhuai dies, the people of Central State City and the monarch residents will also be buried with Zhuai. At this point, Zhuai was scared out of his wits by God Tyr Blackfeather. He could only use the ancient Demon Emperor and threaten Central State City in hopes that God Tyr Blackfeather would be wary. However, God Tyr Blackfeather was not moved at all. He sneered expressionlessly. Death is at hand and you still don't know it. Even if the ancient Demon Emperor came personally, he would not dare to offend the monarch residents. How dare a puny demon commander like you be so arrogant? You deserve to die. When he finished speaking, God Tyr Blackfeather's figure flashed and teleported 10 miles away. He appeared behind Zhuai out of thin air. Feather destruction. God Tyr Blackfeather shouted coldly. He raised his palms and slashed out 2 huge black saber radiances towards Zhuai's back. Chapter 871. God Master He was able to teleport 10 miles away in an instant. Zhuai had yet to learn the art of teleportation. Naturally, he was unable to dodge God Master He's attack. When the 2 black blade lights that contained the power to split the heavens and earth slashed towards him, he sensed the aura of death approaching. His expression changed drastically. However, before he could dodge, he was struck by the 2 blade lights. Bang! With a loud thud, Zhuai was cut into 3 pieces by the 2 huge blade lights. His head was separated from his body. 3 broken parts of his body flew out, spraying demonic blood all over the sky. It fell from the sky like a rain of blood. However, Zhuai endured the extreme pain and immediately performed a demonic art. The 3 pieces of his body ignited with crimson flames and turned into a dazzling crimson light. Swish! 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 In the blink of an eye, the 3 blazing crimson lights merged and formed a crimson light that covered the sky. He didn't reveal his original form. Instead, he maintained the appearance of a crimson light and performed a counterattack. Heaven-destroying blood region. The crimson light immediately expanded and covered a radius of 50 miles. It enveloped God Master He Yu and Ji Tianqing. This area became a boundless blood region. This was also Zhou Shuai's divine soul region. In order to save his life, he had to perform his ultimate move. He formed his divine soul region within God Master He Yu's region. Ji Tianqing and God Master He Yu could only see the boundless crimson light. The two of them were surrounded by a crimson light screen. Swish, 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 swish. Billions of blood droplets flew out from the crimson light screen. It was like a rain of blood that poured down on the two of them. Every drop of blood contained a violent power that could destroy a palace. Moreover, the blood droplets also had a strong corrosive power. When they dripped onto Ji Tianqing's body, they immediately corroded his protective vital energy. He was about to perform his ultimate move to break through Zhou Shuai's heaven-destroying blood region. Divine Master He Yu frowned and shouted coldly, "Such a weak divine soul territory that can't even withstand a single blow. How dare you display your slight skill in front of me?" As he spoke, he slowly raised his right hand and pointed his index and middle fingers at the blood-red light screen in front of him. Break! Instantly, boundless white light gushed out of his fingertips, condensing into a giant sword that slammed into the blood-red light screen. Boom! With a muffled sound, a large hole was instantly blasted through the blood-colored light screen. Immediately after, an earth-shattering power erupted, causing dense cracks to appear all around the large hole, extending in all directions. Accompanied by cracking sounds, the blood-colored light curtain collapsed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it burst into bloody fragments that filled the sky. Countless fragments of bloody light fell from the sky. God Tier Master Black Feather stood proudly in the sky. His clothes and long hair fluttered in the wind. His entire body was emitting an aura of arrogance. His seemingly casual finger actually contained the power to destroy the heavens and earth. It was as if he could even pierce through the heavens with a single finger. Soon, the bloody light fragments that blotted out the sky and covered the sun gathered together with a clattering sound. This time, the bloody light once again condensed into Zhou Shuai's true demon body, turning into a huge three-headed demon dragon. However, its vitality was greatly damaged, and it was at the end of its tether. Its body was much smaller than before. It occupied the sky and stared angrily at God Tier Master Black Feather and Ji Tianqing. Its voice was as deep as thunder as it roared. "Hey you, Ji Tianqing, you will all die a horrible death. No one can stop His Majesty the Demon King's revival. Our demon army will sweep across the world and soon we will slaughter the Central Region, the human race, and the demon race. You won't be happy for long. Soon, you will be buried with Ben Shuai." Zhou Shuai's voice was filled with anger and hatred. His voice reverberated in the sky. God Tier Master Black Feather was still expressionless. His eyes were as cold as ice as he looked at Zhou Shuai and was about to kill him. At this time, Ji Tianqing stepped forward and said to God Tier Master Black Feather, "Lord God Tier Master, let me deal with him. Back then, he captured my father and caused him to be seriously injured. I also almost lost my life. I want to take revenge with my own hands." God Tier Master Black Feather glanced at him and nodded. "That's good. Go." Then, he stood in the sky and watched the battle silently, supporting Ji Tianqing. If Ji Tianqing could not defeat Zhou Shuai, then he would kill Zhou Shuai. After all, Zhou Shuai was trapped in his spiritual realm and would definitely die today. There was no way he could escape. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing flew into the sky and stood 1,000 meters away from Zhou Shuai. His body was surging with golden light as he accumulated a soaring fighting spirit. He shouted with a murderous aura, "Zhou Shuai, it's time to end our grievances today. You are full of evil. I have to cut you into pieces to appease the hatred in my heart." Zhou Shuai was panting heavily. When he heard what God Tier Master Black Feather said, he sneered. Ji Tianqing, if it weren't for He Yu's support, what right do you have to be Ben Shuai's opponent? Ben Shuai only regrets that he didn't kill you and your father back then, allowing you to escape and save your lives. Ji Tianqing shouted expressionlessly, "To deal with a despicable and vicious demon like you, of course I have to resort to unscrupulous means. As long as I can kill you, that's enough. The winner takes all. Cut the crap. You can go to hell now." After that, he did not waste any more time talking to Zhou Shuai. He immediately used his sword technique. Sword of Judgment. He took out his sword embryo and turned it into a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long. It carried a towering golden flame and charged towards Zhuai. Swoosh! The giant golden sword cut through the sky and instantly hit Zhuai's huge body. With a muffled bang, Zhuai's body was blasted open with a huge hole. Demon blood splattered everywhere. The bloody hole, which was more than 10 meters wide, was transparent from front to back. White bones could be seen clearly. After the sword of judgment pierced through Zhuai's body, it flew for 10 miles before flying back and stabbing Zhuai's back. Zhuai screamed in pain and struggled with all his might. Thick blood gushed out of his body as he tried to heal his injuries. However, the sword of judgment stabbed Zhuai's back again with a bang, adding another huge bloody hole to his body. Zhuai's injuries worsened. He looked even more miserable, and his strength was quickly draining away. Ji Tianqing controlled the sword of judgment to turn back into the sword embryo and put it back into his body. Then he used the pure heart demon subduing art and used his most powerful attack. He waved his palms and formed a mysterious seal. His body lit up with a sacred golden light and became extremely dazzling. As the seal was formed, the golden light that lit up his body became sacred and vast. His strength had also accumulated to the peak. The great way is imperfect, the pure heart is pure. The three pure ones transform into Qi, the black heaven demon subduing art. He roared angrily and waved his palms at Zhuai with all his might. Chapter 872. Boom! With an earth-shattering explosion, the divine golden light covered an area of 20 miles. Ji Tianqing and Zhuai's figures were drowned in the dazzling golden light. All the evil things like blood and demonic qi were purified by the divine golden light. Zhuai's demonic true body was also rapidly melting in the golden light like snow under the scorching sun. It was filled with horror and disbelief. It could not believe that Ji Tianqing, who was only at the divine origin realm, could use such a powerful spell. Moreover, this incomparably divine spell just happened to be able to restrain its demonic aura and power. It was its nemesis. It roared angrily, but it couldn't make a sound. It struggled desperately to break free from the divine golden light's wrapping and purification, but found that it could not move an inch. The divine golden light covered an area of 20 miles and seemed to have frozen and sealed the space. It could clearly feel the pain of its body being purified, but could only watch as its body quickly disappeared. After a short 10 breaths, the divine golden light that covered the sky finally dissipated. The sky became clear, the jade universe was clear, and the universe was clear. Zhuai's physical body was completely purified. However, it was still a spirit-refining realm expert and was not killed by Ji Tianqing. All that was left of it was a ball of blazing white divine soul light. It was slightly damaged and full of cracks. Obviously, its soul had also suffered heavy injuries, and its strength was extremely weak. Death was about to befall it. It knew that it would definitely die and could not escape, so it thought of perishing together. Even if Zhuai is going to die today, I won't let you have it easy. Ji Tianqing, you little bastard, will be buried with Zhuai. No matter how talented you are, you can't escape death. Hey you may be half a step into the primordial soul realm, but Zhuai wants to see if you can withstand Zhuai's self-destruction. Let's die together. Ha ha ha. Zhuai's divine soul light ball emitted its maniacal laughter filled with hatred and resentment. As it spoke, the ball of divine soul light violently vibrated, releasing a dazzling white light and emitting a violent aura that seemed capable of destroying the heavens and earth. A terrifying hurricane immediately swept through the area within a radius of dozens of miles, carrying with it a destructive aura. There was no doubt that Marshal Zhuo was going to detonate his soul and self-destruct, so that Ji Tianqing and He Yu would die together with him. In its eyes, Ji Tianqing was only at the heaven origin stage, and there was no way he could withstand the self-explosion of a soul-refining realm cultivator. He would definitely be smashed into pieces and turned into ashes. Although He Yu was powerful, he would definitely be injured by the explosion and lose a lot of his vitality. In this way, even if it died, its death would be worthwhile, and it would contribute to the revival of the demon race. When Ji Tianqing and He Yu saw Zhuai's soul violently agitating, their expressions changed, and their eyes became extremely solemn. Damn demon, you actually want to self-destruct. He Yu frowned and hurriedly waved his palms to control the power of his divine soul territory, trying to resist the power of Marshal Zhuo's self-destruction. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes, and he immediately had an idea. He rushed toward Marshal Zhuo without caring about his own safety. Seeing this, Divine Master He Yu's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly shouted, "Tianqing, come back quickly." He was not afraid of Marshal Zhuo's self-destruction. At most, he would be injured by the explosion, but his life would not be in danger. However, he was very clear that Ji Tianqing would definitely not be able to withstand the power of Marshal Zhuo's self-destruction. He would definitely be blown to smithereens. He immediately wanted to use the grappling technique to bring Ji Tianqing back to his side and use a secret technique to protect him. However, Ji Tianqing rushed toward Marshal Zhuo without caring about anything, and his speed was as fast as a shooting star. As he rushed toward Marshal Zhuo, he also used his spiritual sense to speak to Divine Master He Yu. "Divine Master, believe in me." Divine Master He Yu was stunned for a moment, and he immediately stopped casting his spell. He looked at Ji Tianqing in confusion. However, he did not understand what Ji Tianqing was going to do. At this critical moment of life and death, he chose to believe in Ji Tianqing and hoped that Ji Tianqing could create a miracle. Marshal Zhuo's divine soul ball vibrated even more violently. It expanded to the extreme and was about to explode. Once its divine soul self-destructed, everything within a 100-mile radius would be blown to smithereens. Even a soul-level Dharma treasure would be destroyed. Seeing Ji Tianqing rushing over without any regard for his life, Marshal Zhuo not only did not dodge, but also let out an incomparably carefree laugh, as if he had vented his anger. "Ha ha! Ji Tianqing, are you in despair? Let's die together." In the next moment, Marshal Zhuo's divine soul ball contracted violently, and then it was about to explode completely. However, at this critical moment, Ji Tianqing had already rushed in front of it. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing waved his palms without any regard for his own safety, releasing an endless sacred white light that enveloped Marshal Zhuo's divine soul ball. The sacred white light that surged out from his palms was filled with a power that could suppress and destroy everything. This was not a power that a warrior could control. It was like a divine power that could only be controlled by a god. After Marshal Zhuo's divine soul ball was enveloped by the sacred white light, it froze on the spot. It was as if time had stopped flowing and space had been sealed and frozen. Its divine soul self-destruction had been forcibly stopped by the sacred white light. The expected self-destruction did not happen. Heaven and earth remained calm. Marshal Zhuo was stunned on the spot. Its divine soul had also lost its ability to think. It had no idea what had happened. Divine Master Black Feather was also stunned. He revealed a shocked expression as his eyes surged with intense light. He stared intently at Ji Tianqing and the sacred white light. The shock in his heart was indescribable. Ji Tianqing actually stopped the demonic commander's self-destruction? How is this possible? When the demonic commander initiated its self-destruction, even he was helpless. He had no confidence in stopping Marshal Zhuo's self-destruction. From what he knew, only supremacy experts at the Essence Soul realm had such divine powers. However, Ji Tianqing did it. How could he not be shocked? Soon, he realized that not only did Ji Tianqing stop Marshal Zhuo's self-destruction, he was also devouring Marshal Zhuo's divine soul ball. The sacred white light enveloped Marshal Zhuo's divine soul. Its divine soul was rapidly melting and becoming thin and transparent. After a few breaths, Marshal Zhuo's divine soul had completely disappeared. It had been completely devoured by the sacred white light. From the beginning to the end, Marshal Zhuo did not even have the chance to scream. He was unable to break free from the sacred white light. The sacred white light contained such immense power that even Divine Master Black Feather felt fearful and fearful. Oh my god! What kind of divine art did Ji Tianqing use? Is it Kenshin's divine art? He is only at the 8th level of Sky Origin stage. Yet he is able to use such a divine art. If he reaches the soul-tempering stage in the future, how terrifying will he be? These thoughts flashed through Divine Master Black Feather's mind. His heart was stirred up again. He was indescribably shocked. Swoosh! At the same time, Ji Tianqing withdrew his palms and kept the sacred white light back into the heaven-mending pearl. Chapter 873. From Divine Master He Yu's point of view, Ji Tianqing had used Kenshin's inherited technique to devour Marshal Zhuo's spirit. But in reality, Ji Tianqing had used the heaven-mending orb to purify Marshal Zhuo's spirit. Swoosh! He flew back to Divine Master He Yu and said with a smile, "Divine Master, I did not disappoint you." "Very good." Divine Master He Yu nodded and said with sincerity, Then he waved his hand and made a seal to remove the spirit domain within 100 miles. Peace was restored between heaven and earth, and the night sky was still dark. Divine Master He Yu looked at Ji Tianqing and said calmly, "Don't forget our goal." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Then let's split up and search." The two of them split up. One flew to the east and the other to the west. They released their spiritual sense and spirit to search the earth. The mountains and ground in an area of 50 kilometers had been turned into ruins and extremely damaged because of the battle. A few mountains had collapsed, and the earth was filled with holes and ravines. But Ji Tianqing and Divine Master He Yu wanted to search for Marshal Zhua and 2 Ren's belongings in these ruins. The two of them had intercepted Marshal Zhua and 2 Ren not only to eliminate the 2 demon marshals, but also to make the demon race in Central State lose their leader. Their main goal was to find the 2 demon marshals' treasures that controlled the demon parasites. Only by finding the treasures that could possibly exist could they have a chance to completely solve the demon parasites crisis. Ji Tianqing spent half an hour searching through the devastated ruins. He had searched through everything within a radius of tens of miles. He successfully found a pitch-black spatial ring that was filled with devil qi, as well as a slightly damaged devil Dao magic treasure. He flew back to the night sky to meet up with Divine Master He Yu, and found that Divine Master He Yu had also found a space ring and a damaged robe. Although the two of them were sure that the treasures that controlled the demon parasites were most likely in Marshal Zhua's hands. But the two of them could not tell which space ring belonged to Marshal Zhua. Thus, Ji Tianqing handed the spatial ring and damaged magic treasure to God Master He Yu for him to identify and search for them. God Teacher Blackfeather first opened up the interspatial ring he found and used his divine soul to carefully search through the ring. Then, he revealed a disappointed expression and shook his head. There are many devil stones, materials, and devil Dao artifacts in this ring, but there is nothing we are looking for. That Dharma treasure that can control the demonic venomous worms must be the Dharma treasure of the ancient archaic demon emperor. Its quality must not be low, and it also has the aura of the ancient archaic demon emperor. With that, he opened the spatial ring that Ji Tianqing had found. Once again, he used his soul power to search and rummage through the ring. A moment later, his expression changed slightly as he took out a palm-sized black compass from his interspatial ring. This mysterious compass is the highest quality and most powerful magical treasure in the ring. If I'm not wrong, this compass should be what we're looking for. Hearing that, Ji Tianqing hurriedly stared at the black compass and carefully sized it up. He saw that the compass was completely black and exuded a cold aura of death. The compass was circular, and there were 16 black demonic dragons carved on the edges. There were also many mysterious patterns on the surface of the compass. The entire compass was very simple and unadorned, and its surface was filled with traces of vicissitudes. It had obviously been through countless years of grinding and erosion. Furthermore, he could vaguely feel that there was an extremely evil and powerful aura on the compass. That was the aura of the ancient archaic demon emperor. He nodded at God Teacher Blackfeather and smiled. That's right, this compass does have the aura of the ancient archaic demon emperor. It should be what we're looking for. Next, you have to properly study how to use this compass to control the demonic venomous worms and how to completely resolve the demonic venomous worms. God Teacher Blackfeather nodded slightly and kept the black compass in his interspatial ring. Let's go, we have to hurry back to the monarch residence to study it. With that, he left the battlefield with Ji Tianqing. The two of them turned into 2 streaks of light and streaked across the night sky, returning to Zhongzhou City. To the north of Zhongzhou was the northern desert that was feared and hated by all races. The vast and desolate northern desert was vast and sparsely populated. Most of the terrain was desert and ice plains. This place was sealed by ice and snow all year round. It was extremely cold, and the howling northern winds could blow large rocks into the sky. Therefore, there were basically no grasslands or forests in the northern desert. In this vast world, other than dark brown, there was only the white of ice and snow. The northern desert was not as rich in resources and spirit chi as other continents. This place was extremely barren, and the spirit chi of heaven and earth was extremely thin. All kinds of cultivation resources were also extremely rare. Even birds and beasts were extremely rare. In the legends of ancient times, the northern desert was an abandoned land abandoned by the gods. It was also a forbidden zone for life. None of the major intelligent races were willing to live in the northern desert. Especially after the demonic race was defeated and retreated to the northern desert, the major intelligent races were even more unwilling to set foot in the northern desert. Other than the demonic race, which was born with strong physiques, almost no other race could adapt to the harsh environment of the northern desert. It was also for this reason that the demonic race had been able to live in the northern desert for thousands of years since ancient times and had not been completely exterminated. In the deepest part of the northern desert, there was a dark red river that slowly flowed around a huge ice mountain with a radius of 50 kilometers. It was surrounded by ice plains and ice mountains. The temperature of the world was so high that it could freeze and crack stone and steel. However, the blood river that the demonic race called the Holy River had existed since ancient times. It had never dried up or frozen. This blood river was 500 kilometers long. It flowed out from the ice mountain that was 10,000 meters tall, circled around the ice mountain, and then flowed back into the ice mountain. And this ice mountain surrounded by the Holy River was the holy land of the demonic race, the heavenly demon palace. It was a sparkling and translucent ice mountain, surrounded by steep cliffs. The ice walls were covered with icicles that looked like long spears. At the peak of the ice mountain stood an ice palace that had not melted since ancient times. This ancient, majestic, and dignified ice palace was the heavenly demon palace. Legend had it that the heavenly demon god was the ancestor of the demonic race, and this heavenly demon palace was created by him. In the myths and legends of ancient times, the heavenly demon god wanted to conquer the world, but he was besieged by many gods and finally fell. However, these legends were too illusory, and no one could prove it. Ever since the ancient demonic emperor took over the heavenly demon palace 1,000 years ago, he gained power and became the recognized leader of the demonic race. At this moment, in a secret room in the heavenly demon palace, a 3-meter-tall demonic race man with 2 heads and a body covered in black dragon scales was sitting in a boiling pool of blood. This person had a resolute and fierce face, and he had a head full of white hair. There was also a pair of black bone wings on his back that looked like the legendary Azura wings. He was cultivating with his eyes closed when he was suddenly awakened and opened his eyes. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, and his expression changed as he sensed something. Chapter 874. This ferocious-looking demon with a domineering aura was the leader of the demons, the ancient demon emperor. Before he sent Shuai and Tu Ren out, he had cast a secret spell on the 2 demon commanders. Even if they were billions of miles away, he would be able to sense the death of the 2 demon commanders. Just now, he felt a sharp pain in his chest and sensed it with his divine soul. He could immediately confirm that Shuai and Tu Ren had been killed. He was still sitting in the boiling dark red blood pool, but his entire body was bursting with anger and murderous intent. His eyes were also burning with purple demonic fire. Damn it! Who is it? To be able to kill my 2 demon commanders in such a short period of time? Cloud Spirit Palace? Imperial Court? Or the Imperial Residence? The ancient demon emperor roared in a low voice, his tone filled with anger and murderous intent. The 6 demon marshals were his capable generals, his left and right arms that could be entrusted with heavy responsibilities. Although Shuai and Tu Ren were the weakest and ranked last among the 6 demon commanders, he had personally appointed them. However, he had personally appointed these 2 demon marshals to be in charge of the demonic Gu plan and to seize Ji Tianqing's sword god bloodline. Now that Shuai and Tu Ren had been killed, the mission of taking the Kenshin bloodline had obviously failed. Even the demonic parasite project would be destroyed because of this. Everything that he had meticulously planned would be destroyed in an instant. The ancient demon emperor was even angrier at the thought of this. He clenched his fists so hard that they creaked. Damned human reptile! How dare you destroy my clan's revival plan and kill 2 of my demon commanders? Looks like I have to do it myself. Ji Tianqing, I will personally take your life and take your Kenshin bloodline. I will wash Zhongzhou with blood and turn the land of Zhongzhou into a purgatory. I will make everyone pay a terrible price. No one will be able to stop my footsteps. Sooner or later, I will take over the world and unify the Tianxian continent. The ancient demon emperor roared in a low voice as he looked toward the south. His gaze seemed to be able to see through millions of miles of mountains and rivers to the prosperous land of Zhongzhou. After Ji Tianqing and God Teacher Black Feather returned to the monarch mansion, they went back to their respective caves. God Sage Blackfeather returned to the Blackfeather Palace. He was eager to study the mysterious Black Compass and find a way to solve the demonic vermin project. Ji Tianqing returned to the Tianqing Palace and meditated in his room, quietly waiting for news. The night passed quickly. The next morning, Ji Tianqing was meditating and cultivating when the sound of footsteps came from outside his room. A guard walked to the door and reported respectfully, "My lord, the guards of the Blackfeather Palace have sent a message. Divine Master Blackfeather has summoned you and said that he has something to discuss with you." Understood. You may leave. Ji Tianqing responded and ordered the guard to leave. He quickly got up and left the room, flying towards the Blackwing Palace as fast as lightning. Not long after, he landed outside the gate of the Blackfeather Palace and quickly walked into the main hall. God Sage Blackfeather was waiting for him in the main hall. He held the mysterious black compass with both hands and was still focused on studying it. Ji Tianqing walked in front of him and bowed respectfully. He asked, "My lord, why have you summoned me? Have you found a way to solve the problem?" God Sage Blackfeather nodded slightly. He held the mysterious black compass with both hands and said in a gratified tone, "I have studied it for half the night and finally figured out how to use this compass. Through this compass, I can indeed sense the countless connections that are related to the countless demonic vermin scattered in the hundreds of cities in Zhongzhou." That's great. Ji Tianqing was excited. He quickly asked, "My lord, what are you going to do next?" God Sage Blackfeather said solemnly, "It's very simple to destroy the demonic vermin project. I only need to use a secret technique to control this compass and detonate it, just like how Generals was self-destructed. Once the compass self-destructs, the tens of thousands of demonic vermin connected to it will also be detonated by the secret technique and die completely. Even the puppets planted with demonic vermin will die in a short period of time because of the death of the demonic vermin." I see. Ji Tianqing was enlightened. He said with anticipation, "My lord, let's not waste any more time. Please detonate the compass as soon as possible." All right. However, we cannot detonate it here. God Sage Blackfeather nodded. He brought Ji Tianqing and flew out of the Blackfeather Palace. The two of them left the Blackfeather Palace and flew hundreds of miles away. They arrived at the depths of the mountains. God Sage Blackfeather stopped in the air above a valley. There was no one living within 100 miles. This area was considered remote. He took out the black compass and injected a trace of magic power into it. It floated in the air and rotated gently. It emitted streaks of blood-red light. He raised his palms with a solemn expression. He formed a mysterious seal and performed a secret technique. Swoosh, swoosh. 5-colored spiritual qi gathered from all directions and formed streaks of 5-colored qi. They were injected into the black compass and rotated according to a special pattern. The formations and restrictions in the compass were activated and started to rotate in a complicated reverse direction. Suddenly, the entire compass started to buzz and vibrate. It even emitted thousands of streaks of blood-red light that flickered in a disorderly manner. Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that there was a heaven-destroying and earth-annihilating energy surging within the black compass, surging with a violent and shocking aura. As God Sage Blackfeather continued to cast spells, the black compass rotated faster and faster. The aura it released also became more violent and powerful. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The blood-red light emitted by the compass became more and more concentrated and dazzling. The entire compass turned into a huge blood-red ball of light. It was like a dark red sun that hung in the sky. "Tianqing, back off!" God Sage Blackfeather suddenly shouted. Ji Tianqing did not dare to hesitate. He quickly retreated 30 miles away. At this moment, the energy accumulated in the compass reached its limit. It finally exploded with a boom. At that moment, the compass shattered into millions of dust particles and scattered from the sky. The violent energy accumulated in the compass turned into boundless blood-red light and spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the blood-red light covered a radius of dozens of miles. The entire area turned into a world of blood-red light. The earth-shattering shockwave filled the entire valley, turning the 3 mountains around the valley into ruins. Everything within a radius of 60 miles was flattened and turned into ruins filled with cracks and holes. The deafening sound spread across a radius of 100 miles and reverberated in the sky. When the blood-red light exploded, Ji Tianqing sensed the terrifying power of the blood-red light. He did not hesitate to close his golden wings and protect himself. Fortunately, He had the protection of the Kenshin battle robe. That was why he was not injured. Even so, he was still pushed back by the blood-red light. It took him a long time to calm down. When the blood-red light dissipated, God Sage Blackfeather flew back and stopped next to him. The compass has exploded. Next, we only need to wait patiently for news. Chapter 875. After the mysterious compass was detonated, Ji Tianqing and Divine Teacher Black Feather returned to their respective dwellings. The compass was destroyed. Could the demonic goo chaos be resolved? Ji Tianqing did not dare confirm. He could only stay in Tianqing Palace, cultivating while waiting for news. Unknowingly, for days passed. News of the demonic goo chaos first came from Central State City. Originally, there were many demons hiding in the city. New demonic goo puppets would appear every 2 or 3 days, creating one bloody massacre after another. But just a few days ago, the demonic goo puppets that were causing trouble in the city seemed to have disappeared in a single day. Even the demons hiding in the city also disappeared without a trace, quietly withdrawing from Central State City. In these 4 days, the city was strangely peaceful. Not only were there no more demonic goo puppets causing trouble, there were also no more demonic goo puppets planted in people. After the city lord's palace sensed the strange situation, they used all their strength to investigate, but they still could not figure out what was going on. Therefore, the city lord's palace could only report the news to the monarch palace, asking the monarch palace to make a decision. After Divine Teacher Black Feather received the news, he was filled with gratification, telling the city lord's palace that the demonic goo chaos had been resolved. They only needed to maintain Central State City's stability, dealing with the aftermath. After Ji Tianqing learned of this matter, he personally went to Black Feather Palace to ask Divine Teacher Black Feather. Only then did he know the truth. Originally, after Divine Teacher Black Feather detonated the mysterious compass, all the demonic goo controlled by the compass would be ignited, turning into ashes. Those puppets with demonic goo puppets would naturally also be burned to ashes, turning into nothingness. Therefore, the demonic goo puppets in Central State City would all disappear in a single day. As for the demons hiding in the city, when they learned that the demonic goo puppets were all destroyed and the demonic goo puppets mysteriously died, they were naturally thrown into chaos. When they learned that the 2 demon commanders were killed, they were like a group of dragons without a leader, completely out of their wits. They could only hastily flee Central State City. After hearing this news, Ji Tianqing finally relaxed. In the following days, news from Central State City's 100 cities would be sent back to the Monarch Palace. The situation of the various cities was more or less the same as Central Continent City. The demonic goo puppets that were causing trouble in the city all disappeared in a single day. The demons hiding in the city also fled with their tails between their legs, not daring to show their faces again. For the next few days, all the cities were peaceful and no new demonic goo puppets appeared. Just like that, the demonic venomous parasite, which had caused countless people to panic and despair, was silently resolved. When the princes guarding the various cities reported the news to Divine Master Heiyu, they did not understand what was going on. Divine Master Black Feather didn't explain anything. He only told the princes that the demonic goo riot had been resolved. Once they were done dealing with the aftermath and stabilizing the situation in each city, they could return to the imperial residence. Unknowingly, half a month passed. During this half a month, Ji Tianqing stayed in Tianqing Palace. During this period of time, he went to the Black Feather Palace once to ask Black Feather Divine Master about the 100 cities of Central State. Other than that, he had been cultivating in seclusion in the cave. He was trying his best to break through to the 9th level of the Sky Origin stage. However, the 9th level was also the most difficult hurdle. He had to merge the sword embryo and his heart to form the sword heart to successfully reach the 9th level of the Sky Origin stage and complete the cultivation of the sword heart Dao. In order to complete the sword heart, he had been cultivating day and night for the past half a month. He had tried hundreds of times. However, every time he tried to merge the sword heart, he would be covered in injuries. He had never succeeded. He knew very well that his foundation was not enough. He had to accumulate more strength. On the morning of the 16th day, Ji Tianqing was cultivating in the secret chamber when the door of the secret chamber suddenly flashed with a dazzling light and made a clear sound. There was no doubt that someone was knocking on the door of the secret chamber. They must have something important to tell him. Therefore, he quickly ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. When he opened the door of the secret chamber, he saw a beautiful woman in a white dress standing at the door. It was Yun Yao. Ji Tianqing looked at her and asked gently, "Yao Yao, why are you here today?" Yun Yao nodded slightly and said, "Tianqing, God Mentor He, you just gave the order to gather all the thearchs. He has something important to announce." Ji Tianqing finally understood why she was knocking on the door. He asked, "Have all the thearchs who were sent to the 100 cities in Middle Ground rushed back?" "Yes, most of the thearchs have returned in the past 10 days." Yun Yao nodded. Ji Tianqing tidied his clothes and led her out. "All right, let's go now." The two of them left Tianqing Palace and flew to the towering giant peak in the middle of the mountains. The giant peak that was 10,000 meters tall was the core of more than 50 mountains. There was a 5-colored spiritual lake with a radius of 5 kilometers on the mountain peak. Above the lake was a sea of white clouds. Whenever the monarch mansion had important news to announce, the god mentor would gather all the thearchs there. 45 minutes later, when Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrived at the giant peak, there were already more than 30 thearchs in the sea of clouds. More than 50 spiritual jade thrones floated quietly in the sea of clouds. The thearchs sat quietly on the spiritual jade thrones. They didn't whisper to each other or make any noise. They were all resting with their eyes closed and waiting patiently. In the middle of more than 50 spirit jade thrones, there was a golden lotus throne floating in the air. God Mentor He Yu, who was dressed in a black robe, was sitting on the lotus throne. After Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao arrived, they found 2 spiritual jade thrones next to each other and sat down to wait. 15 minutes later, more than 10 thearchs flew in from all directions and arrived at the scene. At this moment, God Mentor He Yu opened his eyes and scanned the entire place with a dignified gaze. "Almost everyone is here. I've gathered everyone here today to announce 2 things." God Mentor He Yu spoke calmly. His voice was powerful and dignified. More than 50 thearchs looked at him quietly and didn't make any noise. "The first thing is that the demonic parasite riot has been quelled. This time, the demon emperor sent 2 demon commanders and many demon kings and demon generals to spread the demonic parasite wantonly in the hundreds of cities in Middle Ground. This caused the people in the cities to panic and countless casualties. Fortunately, I've done my best to suppress it. All the thearchs have also done their best to resolve this crisis and save the hundreds of cities in Middle Ground. I've destroyed the demonic parasite, and the 2 demon commanders have been killed. All the thearchs' performances were remarkable. Among them, Ji Tianqing's performance was the best. He's the biggest contributor in this demonic parasite riot. If it weren't for Ji Tianqing's help, I wouldn't have been able to kill the 2 demon commanders, let alone destroy all the demonic parasite." God Mentor He Yu's dignified voice spread across the entire place. All the thearchs' faces changed as they turned to look at Ji Tianqing in the crowd. Almost everyone had a puzzled look on their faces, feeling that it was inconceivable. Everyone couldn't believe it. How could Ji Tianqing be the biggest contributor? Chapter 876. Many princes looked at Ji Tianqing in surprise and confusion, sizing him up with complicated expressions. Soon, the princes realized that Ji Tianqing had reached Sky Origin Stage LV8. This result caused many princes to be filled with shock. Their hearts were in turmoil. How is this possible? I remember that when he entered the monarch mansion, he had just reached Sky Origin Stage. Ji Tianqing has only been in the monarch mansion for less than a year. He has already reached Sky Origin Stage LV8? Oh my god! Are my eyes playing tricks on me? How can there be such a monster in this world? I have been cultivating in the monarch mansion for 10 years, and I am only at Sky Origin Stage LV7. Countless imperial princes were astonished, and similar thoughts appeared in their minds. Even the most powerful princes in the monarch mansion, the crown prince of the Water Tribe Imperial Court, Tai Yi, was shocked. He frowned and stared at Ji Tianqing with fear in his eyes. He thought to himself, in just 10 months, he has reached Sky Origin Stage LV7. No wonder he is called the #1 genius of the human race. Not to mention the monarch mansion, even in the entire Tianxian continent, there is no one who is more talented than him. With his incredible speed of growth, I am afraid he will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with me in 2 to 3 months. This guy is my rival. Murong Lingfeng was still in the crowd. He was still in his blue robe and looked more elegant than a woman. However, everyone's attention was on Ji Tianqing. No one was paying attention to him. He looked at Ji Tianqing's back and was expressionless. Jealousy and hatred flashed in his eyes. Damn bastard! What kind of monster is he? His speed of growth is incredible. Today, he was praised by God Master Heyu in front of everyone. He will definitely become the core and leader of the human race's princes. No, I cannot let him grow steadily. Otherwise, the Murong clan will be the next Duanmu clan. The High Lord's great ambition will also be destroyed in the hands of this kid. Thinking of this, Murong Lingfeng's heart was filled with fear and hatred. He had already made up his mind to personally meet the Lord after the meeting. Countless princes were immersed in shock and amazement. They were extremely envious and jealous of Ji Tianqing. Only Fox Princess, Prince Kuan-Wu, son of Heaven Long Yunshao, and Ling Yichen of the demon race were able to maintain their composure. After all, they had been in frequent contact with Ji Tianqing and had always been paying attention to Ji Tianqing, watching him gradually grow to his current strength. Even so, everyone had a whole new level of respect for Ji Tianqing. They were very curious as to how he had helped God Master Heyu resolve the demonic goo infestation. Divine Master Heyu did not explain. Instead, he announced in a dignified voice, "Everyone has contributed greatly to quelling the demonic goo. I hereby announce that apart from Ji Tianqing, every imperial prince will be given a reward of 10 million spirit stones. You can head to the Black Feather Palace on your own and receive your reward from me. You can also exchange for cultivation techniques, pills, artifacts, and other items of equal value." When the princes heard that, they immediately became excited. Their hearts were filled with anticipation. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth within the monarch manor was abundant, and the resources were abundant. It was enough for the princes to cultivate daily. However, 10 million spirit stones worth of resources was equivalent to the entire fortune of a century-old clan. It was definitely a shocking amount of wealth. With this reward, the princes would not lack cultivation resources for at least 5 years. However, Tai Murong Lingfeng and the princes were not happy at all. This was because they understood that God Master Heyu had excluded Ji Tianqing from this reward. He definitely wanted to give Ji Tianqing an even greater reward. As expected, God Master Heyu continued to announce, "Ji Tianqing is the greatest contributor to quelling the demonic goo infestation this time. He should be given a great reward. Apart from that, I have decided to personally guide him to help him reach the soul refinement realm as soon as possible and revitalize my manor's reputation." He looked at Ji Tianqing with a dignified gaze and said in a loud voice, "Ji Tianqing, you don't have to go to Open Cloud Palace anymore. If you have any problems, come find me at Black Feather Palace. I will guide you." Ji Tianqing naturally would not refuse. He hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands in greeting. "As you command, God Master." In any case, after he entered the monarch manor, he had only listened to God Master Heyu's lecture once. No matter who taught him, it was the same. In any case, it was enough that he had the burial of heaven as his teacher. The princes and god masters of the monarch manor were only students and teachers. They did not call each other master and disciple. God Master Heyu's decision was undoubtedly equivalent to taking Ji Tianqing as his disciple. Most importantly, God Master Heyu was the great god master of the monarch manor. His position was second only to the manor lord. He managed all the affairs of the monarch manor and had never personally taught the princes. Now, he had made an exception and was going to personally teach Ji Tianqing. This was something that had never happened in hundreds of years. As long as one was not an idiot, they would understand what this meant. Almost all the princes realized a problem. Ji Tianqing was the lucky one who was favored by God Master Heyu the most. From now on, he would be the most honorable of all the princes, and his future would be the most promising. Instantly, the gazes of countless princes changed subtly. Many people were extremely envious and jealous. The water tribes Tai Yi, Murong Lingfeng, and a few other princes were filled with hatred and hostility towards Ji Tianqing. Only Kuan Wu, Long Yunshao, Ling Yichuan, and Yun Yao were happy for him and secretly cheered. God Master Heyu was silent for a moment, then continued, "Next, I will announce the second matter. On the 9th of next month, the monarch manor will welcome a joyous occasion. Prince Ji Tianqing and Princess Yun Yao are going to tie the knot and hold a banquet in Zhongzhou City to announce the good news to the world. The two princes are the geniuses of our monarch manor. Being able to marry is not only a match made in heaven, but also a joyous occasion for the Ji family and Cloud Spirit Palace. It is also a blessing for the human race. I have been entrusted by Cloud Spirit Palace and the Ji family to personally witness the marriage of the two newlyweds. All the princes can choose whether to attend the banquet or not. We will not interfere. I have finished announcing what I wanted to say. Everyone, you may leave now. After announcing the news, God Master He Yu stood up and flew back to Black Feather Palace. The other princes also stood up and whispered to each other. However, they were not in a hurry to leave. More than 10 princes of the human race surrounded Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao with envy, jealousy, and flattery. They smiled and congratulated the two of them. Kuan Wu and Fox Princess also led the other princes of the demon race to congratulate Ji Tianqing. Even a small number of the princes of the Water Tribe had to congratulate Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao because of their pride. Only Tai glanced at Ji Tianqing expressionlessly and left with the other princes. Murong Lingfeng left with a gloomy expression when no one was paying attention. Long Yunxiao's mood was the most bitter, but he had to maintain the demeanor of an emperor. He congratulated Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao with a smile on his face. In an instant, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao became the center of attention. They were surrounded by many princes like stars surrounding the moon. They were extremely glorious. Chapter 877. After Murong Lingfeng left the Five Colors Spiritual Lake, he did not return to his cave. He directly left the monarch mansion and returned to Central State City. Then he flew out of Central State City at lightning speed, flying towards the mountains in the south of the city. About half an hour later, he flew to a mountain range 100 li away from Central State City and landed on a tall mountain. At the peak of this mountain that was filled with heaven and earth spiritual qi, there was an exquisite and luxurious manor. There were a few dazzling palaces, rows of houses, and buildings. There were also 2 gardens and a man-made lake. The manor was protected by powerful formations both inside and outside, and there were many guards guarding it. The defense was very tight. This was the third prince's temporary residence in Central State City. Although it was not a very secluded place, it was still unapproachable. Murong Lingfeng landed outside the manor's gate. After showing his identity token to the guards, he was led into the manor by the guard captain. The two passed through a courtyard and a few corridors before entering a palace. The guard captain led Murong Lingfeng into the depths of the palace and stopped outside a secret room. Young Master Murong, Lord is currently cultivating in the secret room. Please report to Lord personally. After saying that, the guard captain cupped his hands and left. Murong Lingfeng raised his hand and sent out a primeval essence light. He slapped it on the secret room's stone door and began to knock on it to wake up Lord. The stone door immediately lit up with dazzling 5-colored light and emitted a clear sound. After a while, the stone door's formation activated and slowly opened to both sides. Murong Lingfeng stepped through the stone door and entered the secret room. In the dimly lit secret room, there was a formation engraved on the ground, and a spiritual jade throne was placed in the north. A tall and sturdy man wearing a golden robe with a purple cloak on his shoulders and a crystal mask was sitting on the throne. Without a doubt, he was the so-called Lord, the imperial court's third prince. Ever since he escaped from the buried Star Sea and returned to Central State, he had been in seclusion in his temporary residence to heal his injuries. After close to a month, his injuries had already healed. He had been cultivating in seclusion in the secret room to nurture the small heaven-swallowing beast in the myriad gu origin. Murong Lingfeng walked in front of the third prince and bowed respectfully. Lingfeng greets Lord. The third prince nodded slightly and looked at him calmly. He asked in a deep voice, I am cultivating in seclusion. Why are you knocking on my door now? Murong Lingfeng bowed in fear and trepidation. He bowed and apologized. Lingfeng does not dare to disturb Lord's cultivation, but Lingfeng must report today's matter to you face. Please forgive me, Lord. The third prince nodded expressionlessly and said in a deep voice. Speak. Murong Lingfeng said resentfully, Today, Divine Master Black Feather gathered all the princes and announced 2 things. He recounted to the third prince everything that had happened before. After Murong Lingfeng's Lord Murong Lingfeng's voice. Divine Master Black Feather actually announced in public that he would personally teach Ji Tianqing? Even that idiot Long Yunxiao is following him. Doesn't that mean he will become the leader of all human princes? The third prince clenched his fists. His voice was cold and full of murderous intent. Murong Lingfeng nodded and said with hatred, "Lord, Ji Tianqing has been in the monarch manor for less than a year, and he has grown to this extent. Master Blackfeather's attitude shows that he is very fond of him. If he was allowed to continue developing, it wouldn't take long for him to reach the spirit refinement realm and become the most respected prince in the monarch palace. Lord, we must get rid of him as soon as possible. Otherwise, when his wings are fully grown, he will definitely deal with our Murong family and then destroy your grand plan for hegemony. The Duanmu family's fate is a good example. We cannot sit still and wait for death." The third prince nodded his head and said in a cold voice, "This child is a great threat to me. If he is allowed to grow, he will definitely become my #1 enemy. I will not allow him to continue to develop, and I will not allow him to destroy my grand plans for hegemony. Lingfeng, this child's strength and methods are not to be underestimated. This time, I will deal with him personally. You don't have to be anxious. In the past month, I have been preparing a trump card to deal with him. When I make a move, I'll definitely be able to kill him with a single strike and kill him." Hearing the third prince's words, Murong Lingfeng immediately breathed a sigh of relief. He hurriedly bowed and said flatteringly, "With Exalt personally taking action, it's naturally easy to capture him. Ji Tianqing is dead for sure." He only cared about flattering the third prince and did not notice that the third prince's expression was ugly. His eyes were filled with cold hatred and murderous intent. After all, he did not know that the third prince had gone to the buried Star Sea and fought with Ji Tianqing. In the end, he was in a sorry state. After that, the third prince gave him a few more words of advice and waved his hand, indicating for him to leave. Murong Lingfeng bowed and left the secret room. The door to the secret room closed and the room returned to silence and darkness. The third prince slowly stretched out his right hand. A 5-colored light appeared in his palm, and a 5-colored altar appeared. This was the Gu Dao's divine artifact, the origin of all Gu. He stared at the 5-colored altar with a gloomy expression. His gaze passed through the altar and stared at the giant beast in the Dharma treasure's space. It was a ferocious beast that was as huge as a mountain and as long as 1,000 meters. Its entire body was dark red like blood. That giant beast had no limbs, and its body was like an incomparably thick barrel, but it had an extremely terrifying bloody mouth. It had 4 pairs of wings, and its entire body was surrounded by bloody flames. It exuded an extremely powerful aura. When it opened its mouth, it could cause a shocking hurricane. When it breathed in, it could swallow a few mountains. It had incredible power. This was the ancient mutated beast that the third prince had painstakingly raised, the sky-swallowing beast. The third prince stared at the sky-swallowing beast for a moment and muttered in a cold voice, "Ji Tianqing, O Ji Tianqing, in the Tianqian continent, a monstrous genius like you has not appeared for thousands of years. Yet, you are not willing to be used by me, and even want to oppose me. Anyone who opposes me will only end up dead, no matter who it is." As his voice fell, the third prince closed his eyes and waved his palms to cast a spell. He continued to control the origin of all Gu to catalyze the power of the sky-swallowing beast. At the same time, in the emperor's residence, after Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao dealt with the congratulations of many princes, they returned to Tianqing Palace together. The two entered the study and began to discuss the next steps. Ji Tianqing held Yun Yao's hand and said with a smile, "Yao Yao, now that the demonic Gu chaos has been resolved and the demons have retreated from Zhongzhou in a sorry state, the situation in Zhongzhou has finally stabilized. Our wedding date will be in a month. We can finally prepare for the wedding in peace." Yun Yao nodded and said, "Cloud Spirit Palace will take care of the wedding banquet and celebration. However, the two of us also have to send out invitations to invite friends and relatives to attend the ceremony." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "Yes, especially the people from the Sky Pillar sect. We definitely can't forget." Chapter 878. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao were discussing the matter of writing invitations in the study. Of course, they had to invite the people from the Sky Pillar sect, but not everyone could come to Zhongzhou to attend the wedding ceremony. Sect Master Chu Tiansheng and Grand Elder Xiang Wuji had to be invited. Other than that, some of the elders in the sect might also come. Not only the people from the Sky Pillar sect, but also the Heavenly Net Demon Emperor, Spirit Star Demon Empress, Prince Kunwu and Princess Jiku of the Demon Imperial Court. This family had to be invited. As for the many princes in the Emperor Manor, the two of them also had to personally send invitations. For these matters, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao busied themselves for an entire day before sending out the invitations. The news of Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's upcoming wedding had already spread throughout Zhongzhou. Ji Tianqing was a prodigy whose name shook Zhongzhou. He was the #1 prodigy of the human race. Yun Yao was the apple of Cloud Spirit Palace's eye. She was a proud daughter of the heavens. Their wedding could be said to be an unparalleled grand ceremony that everyone was paying attention to. In the 100 cities of Zhongzhou, the common people on the streets and alleys were discussing this matter. Not long after the disaster of the demonic parasite riot, the various cities had just regained their peace and stability. The common people needed some festive and eye-catching news to divert their attention and dilute the panic and fear brought about by the demonic parasite riot. Not long ago, news spread from the Emperor Manor that Ji Tianqing was a great contributor to quelling the demonic parasite riot this time. Although the hundreds of millions of common people did not know what happened and why, everyone believed this. However, everyone believed the news and felt gratitude and respect for Ji Tianqing. When the common people learned about Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's wedding, they were all happy for this couple. They silently blessed and prayed for them. Almost everyone thought that the two of them were a match made in heaven and deserved everyone's blessings. Only a few people with ulterior motives would secretly criticize and slander them. On the other hand, Cloud Soul Palace had been preparing for the wedding, and they wanted to make the wedding a grand and solemn one that would attract the attention of the world. Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu were also determined to let their daughter marry Ji Tianqing in the most glorious and happy manner possible. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so of course, he had to leave behind the best memories and memories. South of Central State City, in a mountain range 100 li away from the city. Inside the third prince's palace, although it seemed calm on the surface, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was surging violently and gathering in one of the palaces. In a secret chamber deep within the palace, the third prince sat on a spiritual jade throne. He waved his palms with a solemn expression, activating the power of the five-colored altar. Inside the five-colored altar's magical treasure space, the mountain-like heaven-swallowing beast was wrapped in a dark red light, and its body was rapidly expanding. It kept twisting its body, opening its mouth to let out a violent roar, and a shocking hurricane swept up around it. Compared to a few days ago, its body was twice as big, and its strength had doubled. It was even more violent than a mature heaven-swallowing beast. Although it was originally a heaven-swallowing beast cub, it had been catalyzed by the myriad Gu origin and absorbed the power of the Gu Dao divine artifact. Now that it was rapidly growing stronger, it had already mutated. It was no longer a pure ancient mutated beast, but a giant evil beast. An hour later, when the blood-red light around the heaven-swallowing beast's body receded, its body gradually returned to normal. It stopped struggling and roaring, quietly lying in the magical treasure space, silently gasping for breath. The third prince also stopped and slowly withdrew his palms. He adjusted his breathing for a moment, then opened his eyes, and a bright light flashed in his deep eyes. The catalysis is finally complete. Now it's time for the final step. As long as Tuoba Rue and the heaven-swallowing beast complete the fusion, we will be able to create a perfect heavenly capital puppet. Saying so, he waved his hand, sending a five-colored light into the secret chamber's stone door. The secret chamber's stone door creaked open, and he ordered sternly, "Tell Tuoba Rue to come and see me." The guard outside the door bowed and accepted the order, then quickly turned and left. Not long after, a burly young man with a head full of red hair stepped into the secret room. He was the third prince's foster son, Tuoba Rue. With a muffled bang, the secret chamber's stone door closed. Tuoba Rue walked to the third prince respectfully, bowed, and said, "Foster father, what can I do for you?" The third prince looked at him calmly and asked, "Tuoba Rue, I asked you to cultivate the blood fusion divine art in seclusion. How has your cultivation been in the past half a month?" Tuoba Rue did not understand what he meant, so he answered honestly, "Foster father, the blood fusion divine art will consume my chi and blood, replenish my spirit and soul, and greatly weaken my strength. I followed your instructions and cultivated diligently for half a month. My spirit and soul have doubled, but my chi and blood have weakened by 50%. May I ask, foster father, Why did you ask me to cultivate this useless cultivation method? Useless cultivation method? The third prince raised his eyebrows, and a playful smile appeared on his lips. To you, this is indeed a useless cultivation method, and it will even harm your strength. But to me, this cultivation method is very useful. Since you have been cultivating for half a month, you should be ready now. Hold your breath and concentrate, activate your chi and blood, and make it explode 12 times. I am going to perform the Heaven Capital Blood Fusion Divine Art. Hearing the third prince's words, Tuoba Rue's expression changed drastically, and his eyes widened in horror. Foster father, are you really going to let the sky-devouring beast devour me? The third prince stared at him expressionlessly and said in a cold and serious tone, I am not going to devour you. I am going to let you merge with the sky-devouring beast and refine you into a heaven capital puppet. From now on, you will be the sky-devouring beast, and the sky-devouring beast will be you. You will have the strength of a soul-refining cultivator. I am helping you, and this is your fortune. Tuoba Rue's expression turned even uglier, and he retreated in horror. He waved his hand and refused. Foster father, I don't want to become a puppet, and I don't want to have the strength of a soul-refining cultivator. I am loyal to you, and I only want to serve you by your side. The third prince looked at him indifferently and said in a low voice, I used the origin of all venomous insects to catalyze the sky-devouring beast and secretly raised this evil beast, which went against the imperial court's laws. If this news leaks out, it will definitely attract the imperial court's attention, and those forces that oppose me will definitely use this to make an issue out of it. Only by merging you and the sky-devouring beast into a heaven capital puppet can you not attract attention, and you can also make the sky-devouring beast more powerful. Tuoba Rue, I have raised you for so many years, and I have spent so much resources and effort on you. Now, it's time for you to repay this lord's kindness and contribute to this lord's ambition. Hearing the third prince's cold words, Tuoba Rue was shocked and angry, and he turned to run without hesitation. Chapter 879. Swoosh. The golden hand grabbed Tuoba Rue and dragged him back to the third prince. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free from the grasp of the golden hand. Godfather, please let me go. Godfather, please spare my life. I don't want to die. Tuoba Rue was terrified. As he struggled, he begged for mercy and cried for help. However, the third prince did not show any mercy. He threw Tuoba Rue into the magical treasure of the venomous insect origin. Swoosh! A ball of golden light wrapped around Tuoba Rue and flew into the magical treasure. Before he landed, the sky-swallowing beast, who was sleeping on the ground, was awakened. As if it had smelled its prey, the sky-swallowing beast, which was as huge as a mountain, raised its head and opened its mouth to bite Tuoba Rue. The heaven-swallowing beast's bloody mouth could swallow an entire palace in one gulp. Its huge mouth was filled with sharp teeth that were as sharp as swords and sabers. It could crush everything into pieces. However, Tuoba Rue was pitifully small in front of the sky-swallowing beast. The sky-swallowing beast swallowed him and was about to chew him up and swallow him into its stomach. At this moment, the third prince activated the power of the magical treasure of the venomous insect origin and used the Heaven Capital Blood Fusion technique. It released an endless amount of blood-red light and enveloped the sky-swallowing beast. The sky-swallowing beast's body stiffened, and its head hit the ground heavily. The mysterious blood-red light wrapped around its body and melted its flesh and essence. Tuoba Rue, who was swallowed by the sky-swallowing beast, was also corroded by the blood-red light and melted into a blood-red light. The two combined under the catalysis of the Heaven Capital Blood Fusion technique and continued to fuse with each other, resulting in some strange changes. As the third prince continued to activate the secret technique, the sky-swallowing beast and Tuoba Rue turned into a huge blood-red ball of light and slowly merged together. Time passed silently. The third prince continued to use the Heaven Capital Blood Fusion technique, and his power was depleted rapidly. After 6 hours, he had used up more than half of his power, and his face had turned pale. However, he did not make a sound and continued to persevere silently. 10 hours later, when he had used up 80% of his power and his body was extremely weak, the Heaven Capital Blood Fusion technique was finally completed. He slowly retracted his hands and stopped circulating his energy. He sat on the throne and secretly gasped for breath. The heaven-swallowing beast and Tuoba were also undergoing tremendous changes in the magical treasure space in the myriad goo origin. Shwa! The dark red light suddenly shrank from the size of a mountain peak to about 2 meters. The sky-swallowing beast disappeared, leaving Tuoba alone in the Dharma treasure space. There was no obvious change in his appearance. He was still 2 meters tall, with a head full of red hair. His body was burly and strong, and his whole body exuded a valiant aura. However, he stood quietly in the space of the artifact, neither shouting nor making a fuss, appearing somewhat sluggish and strange. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that his appearance had changed after fusing with the heaven-devouring beast. His skin turned dark and was covered with many dark red bumps. A pair of wide black wings extended from his back. His mouth became flat and wide. His teeth were like the fangs of a wild beast, making him look ferocious. The biggest change was in his stomach. It had turned into a huge mouth the size of a wash basin and was filled with terrifyingly sharp teeth. In the past, he looked like a rugged and valiant young man from the demon tribe. But now, he had completely turned into a monster. He looked ferocious and terrifying. More importantly, his eyes and movements had become sluggish, just like a puppet. There was no doubt that this was the heaven capital puppet that the third prince had mentioned. The third prince waved his hand and shot out a beam of golden light. He took Tuoba out of the Dharma treasure space and placed him in the secret chamber. He sized up Tuoba carefully and used his spiritual senses to check Tuoba strength. He immediately sensed the aura of the heaven-devouring beast. This is great. The heaven-devouring beast and Tuoba have fused perfectly. This legendary celestial capital puppet would definitely give everyone a big surprise. Who would have thought that this seemingly dull young man from the demon tribe would turn into a heaven-devouring beast in an instant? Ji Tianxing, your death has come. The third prince muttered to himself, and a sinister smile flashed across his eyes. Not long after, he calmed down and gave an order to Tuoba in a dignified voice. My men have been keeping an eye on Zhongzhou City and the imperial residence. As long as Ji Tianxing leaves Zhongzhou City, you will go and capture him for me. I will let him die in endless pain and torture. I will also use his blood as a sacrifice to my altar. Tuoba was expressionless. He bowed stiffly and said, Yes, sir. The third prince looked satisfied and his lips curled into a sinister smile. 3 days passed quickly. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were busy in the imperial residence for 3 days and finally finished the matter of the invitations. That night, the two of them sat down in the study to discuss matters. Ji Tianxing looked at Yun Yao and said, Yao, the matter of the invitations is over for now. We have considered the people who should be invited. Tomorrow morning, I will go to Cloud Soul Palace to visit my father and bring him to the imperial residence. After all, when we get married, I will go to Cloud Soul Palace to marry you. During this period of time, my father cannot stay in Cloud Soul Palace. Otherwise, it would be against etiquette and people would laugh at him. Yun Yao nodded and said, That's true. Then I will go back with you tomorrow? There is no need for that. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a smile, You will stay in the imperial residence for now. There are still some trivial matters to take care of. When the matters in Zhongzhou City are taken care of, you can go back to Cloud Soul Palace to prepare and wait for me to marry you. Yun Yao looked at him with a gentle gaze. She revealed a faint smile and nodded in agreement. Although the two of them had yet to get married, the two of them were together day and night, and their hearts were connected. They already had the tacit understanding of a husband and wife who respected each other. After discussing this matter, Yun Yao reminded Ji Tianxing to be careful. Then she got up and left, returning to Yun Yao Palace. The night quickly passed. Early the next morning, Ji Tianxing left the imperial residence. When the sun rose, he had already left Zhongzhou City and was rushing towards Cloud Soul Palace as fast as lightning. Now that he was even more powerful, his speed was also much faster. He flew high in the sky by himself. As time passed, he crossed thousands of mountains and rivers. On this night, the night sky was filled with stars and the moon was bright and clear. He had already traveled half the distance. He would arrive at Cloud Soul Palace tomorrow morning. At this time, he was flying above a vast mountain range. Within a few hundred miles, there were no villages or people. This place was very desolate. At this time, in the night sky in front of him, a dark red flame suddenly appeared. It was as fast as lightning. Ji Tianxing immediately felt that something was wrong. When he saw the dark red flame, he immediately frowned. Could it be the remnants of the demon race coming to take revenge on me? He slowed down his flying speed and looked at the blood-red light with a sharp gaze. After a while, the blood-red light flew in front of him and stopped 1,000 meters away. Chapter 880. Swoosh. After the dark red light faded, a figure appeared. It was a tall and sturdy young man with a head full of red hair. He looked to be about 16 or 17 years old. He was wearing a dark red robe. His face was gloomy, and his whole body was exuding a fierce, murderous aura. Although he only stood quietly in the night sky and stared at Ji Tianqing, there was an invisible aura of pressure that enveloped a radius of several thousand meters. Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at the red-haired young man. A cold light flashed in his eyes. This young man from the demon clan looks familiar. Where have I seen him before? He tried to recall it in his mind and immediately remembered it. When he was in the ancient star realm, Yun Yao went missing. He went to the Tianjin sect in anger and fought with this red-haired young man. He clearly remembered that this young man from the demon clan was called Tuoba Rue. Tuoba Rue, the Tianjin sect. Ji Tianqing repeated these two names in his heart. He remembered that Yen had told him that the Tianjin sect was also a puppet force controlled by the third prince. He immediately understood that this Tuoba Rue must be related to the third prince. Thinking of this, he sneered and said, "Tuoba Rue, are you Long Zaiqian's lackey?" Tuoba Rue didn't respond. He stood quietly in the night sky. His body was accumulating violent power, and his murderous aura was getting stronger and stronger. Ji Tianqing saw that Tuoba Rue's eyes and expression were a little dull. He couldn't help but be puzzled. He shouted, "Tuoba Rue, how dare an idiot like you intercept me alone? Where's Long Zaiqian? Why doesn't he do it himself? Could it be that he was injured too badly in the buried Star Sea and is still recovering?" Tuoba Rue finally responded. He stared at him with blood-red eyes, and a cold word came out of his mouth full of sharp teeth. "Die!" As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flashed and turned into a dark red light that charged toward Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! The blood-red light was over 100 feet long, like a violent and domineering saber light, illuminating the night sky within a radius of 20 miles. Half of the sky turned dark red, and the smell of blood filled the sky. The power contained in the saber radiance could be said to be destructive. Ji Tianqing's expression suddenly changed, revealing a look of disbelief. A year ago, Tuoba Rue had not reached the sky origin stage. Now he has reached the soul cultivation stage? How is this possible? Something is definitely wrong. As this thought flashed through his mind, he closed his wings without hesitation to protect himself. Wings of the golden rock. Boom. The huge dark red saber light slammed into the golden wings, and an earth-shattering boom rang out, spreading for dozens of miles. Ji Tianqing was sent flying back 1,000 meters before he managed to neutralize the violent impact and stood steadily in the night sky. Within 1 year, Tuoba Rue has broken through the sky origin stage and reached the soul tempering stage. This is impossible. There is definitely something wrong with him. He must have used the evil secret technique of the demon clan to increase his strength in such a short time. Realizing that there was something wrong with Tuoba Rue's strength, Ji Tianqing immediately used the White Heart Demon Suppression Art and activated the White Heart Dharma Eye. His eyes immediately turned golden as he stared at Tuoba Rue, trying to see through him. The White Heart Dharma Eye was used to suppress the demon clan. As long as Tuoba Rue's change was related to the demon clan, it would not escape his eyes. However, after Ji Tianqing used the White Heart Dharma Eye to observe Tuoba Rue, he did not find anything unusual. Tuoba Rue did not have the aura of the demon clan, nor did he practice any demon clan techniques. However, the heaven-mending orb in Ji Tianqing's mind had a subtle reaction. With the help of the heaven-mending orb, he felt a strong aura of a mutated beast from Tuoba Rue's body. That strange yet familiar aura immediately reminded him of the powerful and violent mutated beasts from the ancient era in the buried Star Sea. How could this be? How could Tuoba Rue be related to those mutated beasts from the ancient era? Ji Tianqing was puzzled and confused. However, he did not have the time to think about it. "Kill!" Tuoba Rue shouted angrily with a ferocious face. Then he rushed over like a shooting star. He flapped the wings on his back and his body was burning with bloody flames. He waved his palms and shot out dozens of bloody light pillars toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not have time to think and immediately counterattacked. Metal Emperor Slash. He unleashed all of his power and released a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long. He slashed it toward Tuoba Rue. The giant golden sword collided with the dozens of bloody light pillars. Bang! 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 Loud bangs echoed in the night sky. In the blink of an eye, the giant golden sword and the bloody light pillars collapsed. They exploded into pieces of light and scattered in the night sky. The night sky within a radius of dozens of miles was illuminated by the pieces of light. Violent shockwaves spread out in all directions like ripples. Ji Tianqing and Tuoba Rue were both pushed back. They flew backward for a few miles before they could stop. Roar! Tuoba Rue had just steadied himself when he flapped his wings again. He roared and rushed over again. Once again, he released the bloody flames and sword radiance that covered the sky. Ji Tianqing was immediately covered by the sword radiance and sword radiance. His body was also engulfed. He quickly used the white tiger sacred sword. His body lit up with golden light and merged with the golden light to form a giant golden sword. The giant sword was burning with golden flames and the shadow of a white tiger appeared. It charged toward Tuoba Rue in an unstoppable and violent manner. Bang! 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 Ji Tianqing's white tiger sacred sword shattered countless sword radiance and sword radiance. It passed through the bloody flames that covered the sky. In the end, the white tiger sacred sword hit Tuoba Rue, and there was a loud bang. Tuoba Rue was sent flying backward. He rolled and fell toward the mountain peak that was 10 miles away. Boom! He ruthlessly smashed into the mountain peak, smashing it into smithereens and turning it into ruins. Dust flew in all directions. A huge crack appeared on the mountain peak. The shaking of the mountain lasted for a long time before it calmed down. However, Ji Tianqing flew to the top of the mountain peak and was about to check on Tuoba Rue's condition. Swoosh! A ray of bloody light flew out from the ruins and shot up into the sky. Tuoba Rue appeared in the night sky, unharmed. He charged toward Tengqingshan again. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing frowned. Tuoba Rue is indeed at the soul-tempering realm. He is on par with Long Zaiqian. This thought flashed through Tengqingshan's mind. His expression turned serious. Tuoba Rue was only 100 meters away from him when he was right in front of him. Tengqingshan immediately activated the thunder spiritual eye on his forehead and was about to release the violent power of thunder to attack Tuoba Rue. However, at this moment, Tuoba Rue, who was surrounded by bloody radiance, suddenly let out a roar. His body instantly expanded by 1,000 times. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, Tuoba Rue turned into a ferocious beast that was as huge as a mountain. Chapter 881. Ji Tianqing had sensed the aura of an ancient mutated beast from Tuoba Rue. However, he did not expect Tuoba Rue to turn into a terrifying beast in the blink of an eye. When he sensed that something was wrong and wanted to escape, it was already too late. This dark red, scaly, barrel-shaped beast opened its horrifying mouth and swallowed him in an instant. His vision turned black, and he was already in the mouth of the terrifying beast. At that moment, he felt like he was in a spacious cave. There was no light around him. The sound of water splashing could be heard. It was the corrosive mucus in the beast's mouth that flowed down the walls of the cave. He was stepping on muscles that were as hard as steel plates. They were uneven and covered with fine barbs. This was the beast's mouth. 100 meters in front of him, there were rows of razor-sharp teeth that glinted coldly in the darkness. Those were the beast's teeth. They could chew anything into pieces. The beast's mouth was tightly shut. Countless rows of razor-sharp teeth were closed. There was no gap. He could not escape at all. Ji Tianqing had never experienced such an experience in his life. This was the first time he had been swallowed by a giant beast and was trapped inside its body. He did not have time to think about how Tuoba Rue had turned into a ferocious and terrifying beast. The most important thing now was to find a way to escape from the beast's mouth. He had to escape. At the same time, after the heaven-swallowing beast swallowed Ji Tianqing, it flapped its 4 pairs of wide wings and flew into the distance. It was obvious that the heaven-swallowing beast had captured Ji Tianqing. It wanted to report back to the third prince. The heaven-swallowing beast's body was 1,000 meters long. It was like a huge mountain. It looked very ferocious and cumbersome. However, it was extremely fast. Its body was surrounded by bloody flames. In the blink of an eye, it could fly 10 miles away. It was like a dark red shooting star that cut across the night sky. It flew back to Zhongzhou at lightning speed. Ji Tianqing was trapped in the heaven-swallowing beast's mouth. His situation was getting more and more dangerous. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood and a foul stench. There were also strands of five-colored brilliance, which contained deadly poison. Thick viscous liquid kept dripping down from the top of his head, landing on his true essence shield and corroding a large hole in it. Not only that, the heaven-devouring beast casually swallowed Ji Tianqing, and a torrential hurricane swept up from its mouth, wrapping around Ji Tianqing as it flew toward its throat. Ji Tianqing was like a scrap of food in its mouth. He was very insignificant and completely powerless to resist. Damn bastard. You want to eat me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. He was filled with anger, and his entire body was filled with a strong killing intent. Metal Slash. He activated the power of the sword embryo and released a dazzling giant sword of golden light. He slammed it against the side wall of the cave. That was the mouth of the heaven-swallowing beast. Compared to the other parts of its body, there were fewer bones and its defense was weaker. Boom. The giant sword of golden light slammed into the dark red cave wall and instantly exploded with a loud, dull sound. The giant sword of golden light created a huge crater in the cave wall. Countless pieces of flesh and blood flew out, revealing eerie white bones. However, the cave wall was not destroyed, and the giant sword of golden light was also shattered by the powerful impact. The heaven-swallowing beast let out a furious roar in pain. Roar! An earth-shattering roar shook the night sky within a 100-mile radius, reverberating in the sky. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing immediately exploded with his fastest speed and escaped from the heaven-swallowing beast's giant mouth. However, before he could rush out, the heaven-swallowing beast's bloody mouth closed. Moreover, the heaven-swallowing beast took a deep breath and exploded with a terrifying devouring power. A dark red hurricane immediately appeared in its mouth and enveloped Ji Tianqing, flying deep into its throat. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing was unable to resist the violent hurricane. In the blink of an eye, he passed through the heaven-swallowing beast's throat and entered its stomach. The heaven-swallowing beast's throat was like a dark red tunnel. It was more than 200 meters wide and hundreds of meters long. And its stomach was like a huge cave with a radius of hundreds of meters. It was very spacious. This dark red spacious cave was filled with countless stinky dark red mucus and many food scraps. There was also an endless amount of dark red flames that were surging violently. Ji Tianqing had just entered the cave. Before he could see his surroundings clearly, he was enveloped by an overwhelming amount of blood-red flames. The heaven-swallowing beast's stomach churned a few times, and countless dark red mucus surged forward like a huge wave, drowning Ji Tianqing. Golden rock wings. Ji Tianqing did not have time to think. He instinctively closed his wings and used all his strength to resist the invasion of the blood-red flames and dark red mucus. Boom! The layer of golden light on the surface of his wings was immediately shattered by the blood-red flames. The power of the two wings was quickly exhausted. They became dim and lusterless, retracting back into his body. The dark red mucus wrapped around his body like a huge wave, crazily corroding his true essence shield. In the blink of an eye, the true essence shield he had formed with all his strength was riddled with holes by the mucus. The dark red mucus immediately stained his body, dyeing his white robe red. Just a drop of mucus had corroded a fist-sized hole in his back. His ultimate sword body, which he had tempered countless times, was actually unable to resist the corrosion of the dark red mucus. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's expression changed dramatically, revealing a look of deep shock. What kind of strange beast is this? It actually has such terrifying power? It's just the mucus in its stomach. Even my wings and ultimate sword body can't resist it? Ji Tianqing realized that he could not stay in the giant beast's stomach for long. Otherwise, he would quickly be corroded into mucus or become food scraps. He used all his true essence to explode, shaking away the dark red mucus and blood-red flames around him. Then, he used all his strength to execute his ultimate killer move. Sword of Judgment. The sword embryo in his body flew out, turning into a 30-meter-long giant sword with a dazzling golden light. The giant sword was surrounded by golden flames, condensing into a pair of wings. Kill! Ji Tianqing roared angrily, controlling the Sword of Judgment, exploding with its strongest power, fiercely slamming into the dark red cave wall a few hundred meters away. That dark red cave wall was the stomach of the heaven-swallowing beast. It was extremely sturdy. Bang! With a muffled sound, the sword of judgment hit the cave wall, exploding into a sky full of bloody light, splattering countless pieces of flesh and blood. The heaven-swallowing beast's stomach was blasted into a 10-meter-wide crater, and dozens of bones were shattered. However, the sword of judgment was unable to penetrate the heaven-swallowing beast's stomach. It was even sent flying back. Ji Tianqing's face was pale as he turned the sword of judgment back into the sword embryo, putting it back into his stomach. Blood immediately flowed from the corner of his mouth. Obviously, his internal organs had been injured by the impact. However, the heaven-swallowing beast's injuries were insignificant to it. It did not affect its movements at all. Roar! It only felt a sharp pain and let out an angry roar, twisting its body fiercely a few times. Chapter 882. Although the heaven-swallowing beast only twisted its body a few times. However, its stomach was in turmoil, and the commotion was shocking. Endless blood flames and dark red mucus immediately drowned Ji Tianqing. He had seen the power of the blood flames and dark red mucus, and of course he did not dare to resist. He quickly took out the seal of mountains and rivers. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, the seal of mountains and rivers appeared out of thin air and expanded to the size of a house. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and entered the seal of mountains and rivers. In the next moment, the blood flames and dark red mucus drowned the seal of mountains and rivers. Bam! With a deafening sound, the golden light of the seal of mountains and rivers was shattered by the blood flames. The seal of mountains and rivers became much dimmer, and its power was rapidly weakening. The dark red mucus wrapped around the seal of mountains and rivers and crazily corroded the seal of mountains and rivers, causing the golden seal to quickly turn dark gold. Fortunately, the seal of mountains and rivers was a high-grade soul-level magic treasure. Its material was tough, and its defensive power was very strong. In a short time, the heaven-swallowing beast could not corrode the seal of mountains and rivers. Ji Tianqing hid in the seal of mountains and rivers space and was temporarily safe. But this was not a long-term solution. The seal of mountains and rivers' power could not last for too long. He had to find a way to escape from the heaven-swallowing beast's stomach as soon as possible. Otherwise, the seal of mountains and rivers would be corroded sooner or later. Moreover, the heaven-swallowing beast was rushing back to the central region. Ji Tianqing did not need to guess to know that the heaven-swallowing beast must be returning to report to the third prince. If he did not escape as soon as possible, he would fall into the third prince's hands before the seal of mountains and rivers was damaged. With the third prince's powerful strength and methods, and that Gudao divine artifact, he could definitely kill him. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing was secretly anxious. He could not leave the seal of mountains and rivers for now, so he forced himself to calm down and controlled the seal of mountains and rivers to fly in the heaven-swallowing beast's stomach. He had to carefully observe the heaven-swallowing beast's stomach and find any possible weak points to have a chance to escape. Swoosh! The seal of mountains and rivers broke through the seal of the blood flames and mucus and flew in the heaven-swallowing beast's stomach. Ji Tianqing released his spiritual sense and carefully observed the dark red cave wall, looking for a weak spot in the defense. The walls of the cave were covered with densely packed stripes and ravines. There were also countless protruding bones. Logically speaking, that was the inner cavity of the heaven-swallowing beast's abdomen. It should be the weakest part of its defense. However, Ji Tianqing had already tried just now. Even if he used the sword of judgment, he still couldn't pierce through it. He could only leave a wound that wasn't too serious. In the short span of 100 breaths, the heaven-devouring beast used its powerful self-healing ability to rapidly heal that wound. Seeing this result, Ji Tianqing could only temporarily give up on the idea of attacking. He controlled the seal of mountains and rivers and continued to fly through the heaven-devouring beast's stomach, patiently searching. A moment later, he controlled the seal of mountains and rivers and flew into the deepest part of the heaven-devouring beast's stomach. He saw a ball of white light flickering in the depths of the dark cave. Puzzled, he controlled the seal of mountains and rivers and flew over. When he got closer, he realized that the ball of white light was a white ball of light. It was enveloped and suppressed by an endless dark red light. In the white ball of light, there was a ball of grayish-white fog. It was the soul white fog. Swoosh! The seal of mountains and rivers stopped in front of the white ball of light. Ji Tianqing observed the ball of soul-white fog at a close distance. Strange. Why is there a ball of soul-white fog in the stomach of this ancient giant beast? Could it be that some unlucky person was swallowed into its stomach, his body was corroded and digested, and his soul was left behind? Ji Tianqing was full of doubts. He stared at the ball of soul-white fog without blinking. At this moment, the ball of soul-white fog that was motionless seemed to have sensed something and started to change. Swoosh! The white fog rolled violently a few times and condensed into a 5-inch tall little person. The appearance of the little soul person was very vivid and lifelike. Ji Tianqing took a closer look. After seeing its appearance clearly, he was instantly stunned. This was because it was a burly demon youth. Its face was exactly the same as Tuoba Rue's. This is Tuoba Rue's soul-white fog? Could it be that he was swallowed by the sky-swallowing beast? This is impossible. He turned into the sky-swallowing beast just now. How could this be? This is too strange. Ji Tianqing frowned in confusion. He could not figure it out. At this moment, the little soul person in the white ball of light also stared at the seal of mountains and rivers. Its face was distorted as it roared. Ji Tianqing, you don't have to hide. I know it must be you. It's all because of you, you bastard, that I ended up in such a miserable state. Now you have also been swallowed by the sky-swallowing beast. We are all going to die. Ha ha. The little soul person could not make a sound. It could only send out soul waves. Ji Tianqing's soul was unusually strong. He could clearly sense its soul aura and hear its roar that was filled with hatred and resentment. He immediately frowned and thought to himself, so this giant beast is the legendary sky-swallowing beast. This kind of ancient beast was said to be able to devour everything. It was easy for it to swallow the mountains and rivers within a radius of 100 miles. When the sky-swallowing beast grows to its peak, it is comparable to a primordial soul realm expert. It can overturn rivers and seas and create chaos. This ancient beast only exists in the buried star sea. I know. Long Zitian went to the buried star sea to find the sky-swallowing beast. Although Ji Tianqing had never seen the sky-swallowing beast before, he had heard of the legends. Now, not only did he know the identity of this giant beast, but he also saw how terrifying the sky-swallowing beast was. At the same time, he finally understood why the third prince had gone to the buried star sea. I didn't expect that bastard Long Zitian to find the sky-swallowing beast in the buried star sea. It's a pity that he didn't die in the buried star sea. Ji Tianqing cursed the third prince with a heart full of hatred. He wished he could tear the third prince into pieces. He quickly calmed down and stared at Tuoba Rue in the white ball of light. He asked in a low voice, Tuoba Rue, what is going on? Didn't you merge with the sky-swallowing beast? Why is your soul trapped here? Tuoba Rue stared angrily at the seal of mountains and rivers and remained silent. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked in a low voice, Tuoba Rue, aren't you Long Zitian's subordinate? Isn't this Long Zitian's scheme? If I'm not wrong, Long Zitian must have gone to the buried star sea to capture the sky-swallowing beast. He then borrowed the power of the origin of all venomous insects and used a secret technique to merge you with the sky-swallowing beast. When you merge with the sky-swallowing beast, you will become stronger and easier for Long Zitian to control and work for him. Ji Tianqing spoke frankly with assurance. His tone was calm and confident, containing an unquestionable certainty. However, before he could finish, Tuoba Rue interrupted him and shouted angrily, Bullshit! You self-righteous fool, what do you know? How can you imagine Long Zitian's savagery and viciousness? With your strength and intelligence, how can you fight him? You are dead. We will all die. Chapter 883. Tuoba Rue's anger and resentment made Ji Tianqing vaguely understand one thing. It seems like Tuoba Rue didn't merge with the sky-devouring beast willingly. If that's the case, Long Zitian must have used Tuoba Rue as a sacrifice to achieve his goal. Ji Tianqing sensed an opportunity, and took the opportunity to get information from Tuoba Rue. Tuoba Rue, you have such strength at such a young age, and you even merged with the sky-devouring beast. It seems like Long Zitian thinks highly of you. You should be happy that you merged with the sky-devouring beast and became so strong. Why are you so angry with Long Zitian? Think highly of my ass. Tuoba Rue stared at Ji Tianqing angrily and growled, You idiot. You don't know anything, and you're talking nonsense here. I'm really curious. With your strength and intelligence, how did you destroy the Duanmu family and escape from Long Zitian's attack? Ji Tianqing looked at him calmly. He was neither angry nor retorted. Tuoba Rue's reaction made him feel more and more interested. There must be more to it. Therefore, he said to Tuoba Rue, it seems like you hate Long Zaitin a lot. Did he force you to sacrifice yourself and let the sky-devouring beast devour you? Tuoba Rue was silent and refused to answer this question. Ji Tianqing was even more certain of his guess. He continued, now that you're only left with a soul, there's nothing you can do other than complain and vent your anger. You hate Long Zaitin, but you can't do anything to him. You have no chance to take revenge. You can only wait for death. Indeed, his words hit Tuoba Rue's weak point. Tuoba Rue immediately calmed down. Tuoba Rue was no longer angry. He stared at the seal of mountains and rivers and asked in a low voice, Ji Tianqing, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to say that I'm a failure? Humph. So what if I'm only left with a soul and can only wait for death? Aren't you the same? You're also going to die. What right do you have to laugh at me? Ji Tianqing chuckled and said confidently, He. Tuoba Rue, you're wrong. I'm different from you. A mere heaven-devouring beast can only trap me temporarily, but it's absolutely unable to do anything to me. If I were to risk my life to break out of this encirclement, I would definitely be able to escape from here. As for you, you don't even have the qualifications to fight for your life. Tuoba Rue fell into silence again, unable to refute. Ji Tianqing smiled and asked, Tuoba Rue, do you want revenge? Although his tone was very calm, it was not exciting. However, to Tuoba Rue, it was filled with a bewitching power. After a moment of silence, it finally opened its mouth and asked in a low voice, Yes. Of course. Long Zaitin took me in as his adopted son, and I respected him greatly. I listened to his every word, but from the very beginning, he treated me as a chess piece and raised me. In order to realize his grand ambition, he didn't care about the lives of others and used the celestial blood fusion technique to refine me into a celestial puppet. It won't be long before my soul is completely fused with the heaven-devouring beast. At that time, I will become a puppet of Tiandu, which is even more terrifying than death. Celestial blood fusion technique? Celestial puppet? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, I have never heard of this secret technique. Could it be a secret technique of the Gu Dao? Tuoba Rue stared at the seal of mountains and rivers and asked in a low voice, Ji Tianqing, even if I want revenge, what does it have to do with you? Can you help me take revenge? Why do you want to help me? How can you help me take revenge? Ji Tianqing smiled silently and said in a playful tone, You even need someone else's help to take revenge. You are so pitiful. Tuoba Rue's expression changed, and he roared angrily, Ji Tianqing, you dare to trick me? No. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said calmly, If you want revenge, sure. However, I will not help you. We will work together. Work together? Tuoba Rue was stunned and thought about it silently. Ji Tianqing did not give him time to think and continued, Tuoba Rue, you have no choice. If you want revenge, you can only work with me. Don't worry, as long as we can get out of here, I will kill Long Zaitin sooner or later. Tuoba Rue hesitated and said in a low voice, Not only that, you have to kill the heaven-swallowing beast. I want my body back. Ji Tianqing sneered contemptuously, You think too much. What can you do for me? Why should I help you kill the heaven-swallowing beast? Tuoba Rue's face was full of anger, and he explained, The heaven-swallowing beast has not completely merged with me. My soul is connected to it. If I fight back, I can restrain it and weaken its strength. Only then will you have a chance to escape. However, if I fight back, my soul will be refined by it, and I will be completely destroyed. I am risking my soul to work with you. Shouldn't I be rewarded? Ji Tianqing thought for a while and said with a smile, What you said is not without reason. However, I can't guarantee that I can kill the heaven-swallowing beast. I can only try my best. If you are willing to believe me, let's take a gamble. If you are not willing to work with me, you can die on your own and wait for your soul to be refined. This time, Tuoba Rue pondered for a long time. He knew his own situation. If he did not fight back, he would die. If he worked with Ji Tianqing, he might have a chance to live. Hence, he thought for a while and nodded in agreement. All right, I will believe you this time. Let's take a gamble. Aren't you known as the #1 genius of the human race? Don't disappoint me. Ji Tianqing only smiled and did not say anything. Tuoba Rue did not waste any more time. He immediately activated his soul power to resist the heaven-swallowing beast's soul and fought for control of his body. The white ball of light shone brightly. The soul minifigure also turned into a wisp of white soul mist and surged violently. Tuoba Rue struggled with all his might, and the heaven-swallowing beast was greatly affected. Originally, it was flying in the dark night sky. Its body was stable, and its 4 pairs of wings were flapping rapidly. Its body was surrounded by a bloody light. Suddenly, its soul was restrained and suppressed. It lost control of its body. Its flying speed was reduced by more than half. Its body swayed and swayed in the night sky. Roar! Roar! The heaven-swallowing beast's soul resisted instinctively and suppressed Tuoba Rue's soul with all its might. It roared angrily, and its body swayed violently. Finally, it fell from the sky and crashed heavily on a tall mountain. Bang! Amidst a deafening explosion, the 10,000 feet tall mountain was smashed into pieces. Endless dust burst out, covering the night sky. An earth-shattering commotion spread throughout a radius of 100 miles. The heaven-swallowing beast's body was still rolling on the collapsed ruins. It swayed violently and caused the mountains to shake. Chapter 884. The heaven-swallowing beast was rolling violently on the ruins, causing its stomach to churn and blood to fill the sky. However, Ji Tianqing had been accumulating his strength and waiting for the best time to strike. When Tuoba Rue warned him, the heaven-swallowing beast's soul was restrained and its body was almost out of control. This was the best time to strike. Ji Tianqing struck without hesitation. He controlled the seal of mountains and rivers and unleashed his strongest power. He used the fastest speed in his life to crash into the heaven-swallowing beast's stomach. The seal of mountains and rivers emitted a dazzling golden light, and a long golden flame trailed behind it. It was like a dazzling golden shooting star. It pierced through the blood-red flames and the wave-like dark red mucus and unleashed a destructive force. Bam! Amidst the deafening noise, the seal of mountains and rivers crashed into the dark red wall with a loud bang, erupting with a force that could destroy heaven and earth. Suddenly, a deep pit about 5 meters deep and more than 30 meters wide appeared on the dark red wall. Countless pieces of flesh and blood were mixed together and splattered in all directions. Dozens of thick white bones could be clearly seen in the deep pit. More than half of them had been shattered. The heaven-swallowing beast's mountain-like body was also pushed 100 meters away by the terrifying impact, flattening the uneven ruins into flat ground. The excruciating pain made it furious. Its body shook violently as it struggled violently on the ruins. Bam! 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 Its 1,000-meter-long body slammed heavily on the ground and shattered it. The surrounding mountains were also on the verge of collapsing. It struggled with all its might to suppress Tuoba Rue's soul and regain control of its body. Tuoba Rue was under unprecedented pressure. His soul was distorted and almost collapsed a few times. However, he refused to give up. He tried his best to hold on and pulled the heaven-swallowing beast's soul back and forth. He did not hope to defeat the heaven-swallowing beast's soul and regain control of its body. He only hoped to restrain the heaven-swallowing beast so that Ji Tianqing could escape. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing used his ultimate killer move again and continued to attack the deep pit. He opened the third eye on his forehead. In the golden Dharma eye, the blue pupil accumulated destructive lightning. Lightning! He shouted and released all the lightning energy accumulated in his Dharma eye without holding back. A blue lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket appeared in an instant. With an unstoppable and violent power, it slammed into the wound. Bam! Another muffled explosion rang out. The deep crater-like wound immediately expanded and deepened by 4 meters. The dark red flesh in the wound was charred by the lightning and black smoke rose. At the bottom of the pit were rows of white bones with a layer of black scales. At first glance, Ji Tianqing knew that this was the heaven-swallowing beast's stomach. As long as he could break through that row of bones and scales, he would be able to blast a hole through the heaven-devouring beast's stomach and escape. Sword. He did not care about the consumption of his vital essence at all. Once again, he took out the sword embryo, which transformed into a giant golden sword that was 30 meters long. The giant sword glowed with a dazzling golden light. Accompanied by a pair of golden wings, it exploded with a power that could pierce through everything and viciously slammed into the wound. Boom! The sword of judgment hit the bones and scales at the bottom of the wound, and a loud thud was heard. Hundreds of bones shattered on the spot, turning into white bone dregs. Mixed with the broken scales, they flew into the dark night sky outside. The heaven-swallowing beast's stomach was finally blasted through. That wound had become a huge hole with a radius of 10 meters. Through the hole, he could clearly see the ruins and the night sky outside. It's finally done. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's spirit shook, and he secretly shouted in his heart. Without hesitation, he passed through the hole and escaped from the heaven-devouring beast's stomach, returning to the gloomy night sky. At the same time, the heaven-devouring beast was driven mad by the intense pain from its wound. Roar! It opened its bloody mouth and let out a hysterical roar. It actually stirred up a shocking hurricane in the night sky, crushing several mountains around the ruins. A deep crater with a radius of 30 miles was also created on the ground by the hurricane. Dust flew everywhere, covering the sky and the sun. The heaven-devouring beast went berserk. Its soul power exploded to the extreme, and it desperately suppressed Tuoba Rue. Tuoba Rue could not resist at all. His soul was suppressed until it trembled and shattered. He was no match for the heaven-devouring beast. His soul quickly shattered and was quickly devoured by the heaven-devouring beast. At the moment when his soul was about to be destroyed, he let out a desperate soul roar. Ji Tianqing, remember your promise. You must kill Long Zhaitian. Otherwise, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. After he roared this sentence, his soul completely collapsed and turned into wisps of white soul mist, which was immediately devoured by the heaven-devouring beast. The heaven-devouring beast regained control of its body and let out an excited roar. Its soul was devouring Tuoba Rue's soul. Its body twisted a few times, and it flapped its wings and flew back into the night sky. The thick mucus and bloody flames in its stomach immediately flowed out of the hole in its stomach and scattered on the ruins and the ground. The night sky was illuminated by the dark red light. The thick dark red mucus corroded the ground into black powder, and poisonous smoke rose into the sky. Ji Tianqing stood thousands of feet high in the sky and looked down at the scene below. He frowned and his expression was very serious. He was very clear that Tuoba Rue's soul had been refined by the heaven-devouring beast and was completely destroyed. He looked at the heaven-devouring beast with a serious expression and thought to himself, Tuoba Rue, although you are Long Zhaitian's adopted son, you were once my enemy. However, you were used as a pawn and sacrifice by Long Zhaitian. Only at the last moment of your life did you repent. Actually, you are also a pitiful person. It's just that Long Zhaitian is too cruel and merciless. He would do anything to achieve his goal. Don't worry, I will not let Long Zhaitian go. One day, I will kill him with my own hands. After saying that, Ji Tianqing turned to leave. However, the heaven-devouring beast rushed over like a ray of light and launched an attack without caring about anything else. Roar! It opened its bloody mouth and released a dark red light that covered the sky. It wanted to engulf the area within a radius of 20 li and swallow this area. The dark red light shrouded down. Not only was the area within a radius of 20 li going to be engulfed, Ji Tianqing was also going to be swallowed into its stomach again. Previously, Ji Tianqing was swallowed into the heaven-devouring beast's stomach because he was unprepared. Now that he had already suffered once, how could he fall for it again? When the dark red light shrouded down, he did not hesitate to take out his sword embryo and flew away on his sword. Swish! He turned into a golden light and dodged the dark red light with his fastest speed, quickly disappearing into the night sky. There was no choice. In the previous battle, he had used his ultimate killer move several times, and his primeval essence was greatly depleted. If he continued to fight, he was definitely not the heaven-devouring beast's match, and would definitely meet with misfortune. Now, he could only escape temporarily and find a chance to take revenge in the future. Chapter 885. Seeing Ji Tianqing escape on his sword, the heaven-devouring beast roared angrily and chased after him with all its might. It flapped its 4 pairs of wings, and its body emitted a dazzling blood-red light. It streaked across the night sky like a shooting star. However, after it chased for 300 miles, Ji Tianqing left it behind without a trace. Ji Tianqing, who was flying on his sword, reached the limit of his speed. He was comparable to an expert at the 4th or 5th level of the soul-tempering realm. The heaven-devouring beast had been carefully nurtured by the 3rd prince for a long time and had reached the soul-tempering realm under the catalysis of the Thousand Gu origin. However, it had great strength and powerful defense. It could devour all things. Speed was not its strong suit. It was only at the level of an ordinary expert at the second level of the soul-tempering realm. The heaven-devouring beast stopped in the night sky unwillingly. After roaring angrily a few times, its body shrank violently. Swoosh! After a dark red flash, its 1,000-meter-long body shrank several hundred times, turning into a red-haired youth 2 meters tall. It turned into Tuoba Rue's appearance. His face was ferocious, his eyes were blood-red, and there was a bloody mouth on his abdomen. However, the real Tuoba Rue had been completely destroyed. He was not the real heaven-devouring beast, but a celestial capital puppet. He had fused with Tuoba Rue's body and soul, and had a part of Tuoba Rue's memories and intelligence. He did not look as dull and stiff as before. However, as a celestial capital puppet, he did not have his own thoughts, and was completely obedient to the third prince. Ji Tianqing, you insignificant worm, one day, I will completely devour you. The celestial capital puppet clenched his fists. The bloody mouth on his abdomen opened and closed as he spoke in a hoarse voice. With that, he flapped the wings on his back and turned into a dark red stream of light. He tore through the night sky at lightning speed and returned to Zhongzhou City. A few hours passed quickly. At noon the next day, the celestial capital puppet rushed back to the palace in the south of Zhongzhou City. Swoosh! He descended from the sky and landed outside the gate of the manor. The guards at the gate immediately bowed and greeted. Greetings, young Master Tuoba. The celestial metropolis puppet ignored the many guards and expressionlessly stepped through the gate into the manor. Not long after, he entered the palace in the depths of the manor and came to the door of the third prince's secret room. He opened the stone door of the secret chamber with a secret technique and strode into the secret chamber. Inside the secret chamber, the third prince was sitting upright on a spiritual jade throne. He held a spiritual stone in each of his hands and was circulating his martial arts to recover his strength. Previously, in order to use the Heaven Capital Blood Fusion Grand technique to refine the Heaven Capital puppet, he had used up 70 to 80% of his power, and his vitality was greatly damaged. Even though he had been recuperating for 2 or 3 days, he still hadn't fully recovered. The celestial puppet entered the secret chamber and stood 10 steps away from him. It bowed respectfully and said, "Master." The third prince stopped cultivating and opened his eyes to look at Tuoba Ba. He asked in a cold voice, "Tuoba, have you completed your mission? Where is Ji Tianqing?" The celestial puppet revealed an ashamed expression. It lowered its head and said, reporting to Master, "This subordinate has failed in his task and allowed Ji Tianqing to escape." That little bastard actually escaped? The third prince's expression changed and he frowned fiercely. The celestial puppet didn't dare to hide anything and hurriedly reported what had happened last night in detail. After the third prince finished listening, his expression became more and more serious. His eyes surged with intense anger and hatred. "I have just refined the celestial puppet, and this is the first time I used this secret weapon. It actually failed in its task and allowed Ji Tianqing to escape. Tuoba Rue, this bastard, I have raised him for more than 10 years in vain. I didn't expect him to be an ingrate. He is only left with his soul, but he actually colluded with Ji Tianqing and joined forces to resist. His death is not regrettable." The celestial puppet felt the third prince's anger and murderous intent. It lowered its head in reverence and didn't dare to make a sound. After a moment, when the third prince's anger dissipated a little, it opened its mouth and said, "Master, this subordinate has disappointed you. However, this subordinate saw the direction Ji Tianqing escaped in. It seems to be towards Cloud Spirit Palace. Master, please don't worry. This subordinate will go to Cloud Spirit Palace and set up an ambush. This time, we will definitely be able to capture Ji Tianqing." The celestial puppet had a certain level of intelligence. Although its intelligence wasn't very high, it at least knew how to make up for its mistakes. The third prince waved his hand and said expressionlessly, "No need. You have already failed once. It's useless to set up an ambush now. He will definitely be alert. This operation is just a test. It doesn't matter if it fails. At least, the celestial puppet's power and effect have already reached my expectations. It will be of great use in the future." The celestial puppet respectfully cupped its hands and asked, "Master, how should we deal with Ji Tianqing?" The third prince said with a gloomy face, "Let him live for a few more days. After I have completely removed the hidden dangers in my body and my strength has recovered to its peak, I will personally kill him. There is still a month until his wedding with Yun Yao. When the time comes, I will turn his wedding into a funeral. This subordinate understands. The celestial puppet cupped its hands and bowed. Don't worry and recuperate. Merge with Tuoba Rue's soul as soon as possible and increase your strength. The third prince waved his sleeves and shot out a hazy spiritual light. He then put the celestial puppet into the five-colored altar. At the same time, Ji Tianqing was riding on Qianyu and flying in the white sea of clouds. The noon sun shone on his body, making him feel a trace of warmth. The fatigue in his body was also dispelled. Last night, in order to escape the pursuit of the heaven-swallowing beast, he had used up a lot of true core strength to run for hundreds of miles on his sword. In addition, he had used his trump card several times during his journey. More than half of the true core strength in his body had been used up. Now, his strength was very weak. He only had about 40% of his combat strength left. If the heaven-swallowing beast caught up with him again, he would definitely not be its match. Long Zaitian, that bastard, actually used the origin of all poisonous insects and sorcery to cultivate the heaven-swallowing beast. He is so vicious and cruel that it makes one's hair stand on end. Luckily, he only sent the heaven-swallowing beast and didn't come to kill me personally. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to escape last night. Ji Tianqing murmured in a low voice. His face was still gloomy and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. As Qianyu flew, he said to him, Old Ji, the third prince has been using all kinds of tricks against you. You are in the open and he is in the dark. This way, you are in a very passive situation. Doesn't Long Yunshao have a grudge against him? Why do you have to fight alone? I suggest you talk to Long Yunshao. Maybe the two of you can work together to deal with the third prince. With your strength and methods and Long Yunshao's power, you might be able to kill him. Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, Qianyu, even if you didn't remind me, I also had this idea. However, I have to go to Cloud Spirit Palace first. When I return to the imperial residence, I will discuss this with Long Yunshao. Qianyu flapped his wings and continued, Oh right, old Ji, you have to tell Palace Master Yun and Dr. Bailey about this. After all, they are senior experts. Maybe they can think of a way. You are not fighting alone now. We are all supporting you. Chapter 886. Ji Tianqing sat on Qianyu's back as they rushed towards Cloud Soul Palace. Qianyu finally arrived at Cloud Soul Palace in the evening when the sun was setting. At this time, Ji Tianqing had recovered 30% of his strength after half a day of recuperation. His mental state was also much better. He landed on a plaza paved with golden bricks and walked up the 99 steps of green jade to enter Cloud Soul Palace. Inside and outside Cloud Soul Palace, many servants and servants were busy preparing for his and Yun Yao's wedding. When Ji Tianqing walked through Cloud Soul Palace, the servants and guards would respectfully bow and greet him as young master. Ji Tianqing walked through many courtyards and corridors to reach his father's residence. It was a quiet and secluded courtyard with elite guards outside. There was a bamboo forest, a garden, a lotus pond, and ancient pine trees in the courtyard. It was a peaceful place. Coincidentally, Ji Chongkong wasn't the only one in the courtyard. Yun Zhongqi was there as well. When Ji Tianqing entered the courtyard, he saw his father and Yun Zhongqi sitting under an ancient pine tree in the courtyard. They were chatting with smiles on their faces. The two of them were sitting on stone stools. There were 2 cups of spirit tea and 2 plates of pastries on the stone table in front of them. The two of them seemed to be discussing the wedding celebration. When they talked about something happy, they laughed heartily. Ji Tianqing walked under the ancient pine tree and greeted the two of them with a smile. Father, Uncle Yun. Yun Zhongqi and Ji Chongkong stopped talking and turned to look at him with gratified smiles. What a coincidence. Ji Chongkong clapped his hands with a smile. Yun Zhongqi also smiled and nodded. Tianqing, we were just talking about you when you came back. As he spoke, he looked at Ji Tianqing from head to toe and frowned. Tianqing, why are you injured? And why are you in such a sorry state? Although Ji Tianqing's expression and condition had returned to normal, Yun Zhongqi was a soul refiner. However, Yun Zhongqi was a soul refinement realm cultivator, and he was very familiar with him. Naturally, he could tell that he was injured. Ji Chongkong also saw the clues and asked with concern, Tianqing, what happened? Ji Tianqing did not hide the truth and said, when I was on my way to Cloud Soul Palace, I met a young demon. His name is Tuoba Rue, and he is the adopted son of the third prince. He told Yun Zhongqi and his father about what had happened last night. After he finished speaking, he did not forget to remind Yun Zhongqi, Uncle Yun, the third prince's heaven-devouring beast was found in the Star Burial Sea. He used a Gu-Path divine artifact to nurture the heaven-swallowing beast to become extremely strong. He then fused the heaven-swallowing beast with Tuoba Rue and used an evil secret method to refine a heavenly capital puppet. The celestial capital puppet has the strength of a spirit refinement realm cultivator. Normally, it is in human form, but it can transform into a heaven-devouring beast at any time. It is impossible to guard against it. Yun Zhongqi nodded and stroked his beard. He said in a serious tone, the third prince used an evil secret method to nurture an evil heaven-devouring beast. This is against the imperial court's laws. In order to refine a heavenly capital puppet, he actually sacrificed his adopted son. It is clear that he is a vicious person. Fortunately, Tianqing, you are blessed by the heavens and managed to escape successfully. I will write a memorial and send it to the imperial court as soon as possible. I will hand it to the imperial emperor and ask him to investigate this matter. Ji Tianqing sighed and said in a serious tone, the third prince naturally understands the imperial court's laws. If he dares to do this, he must have something to rely on. He is not afraid of being punished by the imperial emperor. Yun Zhongqi said in a dignified tone, no matter what, I will report him and give him a warning. Ji Tianqing nodded in agreement and did not talk about this matter anymore. He looked at his father, Ji Chongkong, and said, Father, I came to Cloud Soul Palace this time mainly to visit you. Also, I have to bring you back to the Imperial Emperor residence. Ji Chongkong nodded and said calmly, Tianqing, my body is fine and my strength has increased. Cultivating in Cloud Soul Palace is twice the result with half the effort. As for going to the Imperial Emperor residence, I have already considered it. According to the rules, it is indeed not suitable for me to stay in Cloud Soul Palace. However, the Imperial Emperor residence is a martial arts holy land. The rules are strict and there are many things to pay attention to. I am not willing to go to the Imperial Emperor residence to avoid causing trouble and criticism for you. But, Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and was about to persuade his father. At this moment, Yun Zhongqi waved his hand at him and said, Tianqing, your father is used to living here. It will be inconvenient for him to go to the Imperial Emperor residence with you. Moreover, Cloud Soul Palace is very far from Zhongzhou City. You have already been ambushed by the heavenly capital puppet on the way here. If you bring your father back to Zhongzhou City and encounter another ambush on the way, won't it be even more dangerous? Don't persuade your father. Just let him stay in Cloud Soul Palace. We are all martial arts aristocratic families, not ordinary people. There is no need for us to adhere to complicated formalities. Since Ji Tianqing was unwilling to go to the Imperial Emperor residence, and Yun Zhongqi had also spoken up to persuade him, Ji Tianqing did not say anything else and nodded in agreement. He chatted with his father and Yun Zhongqi for a while before leaving the small courtyard to visit his master, Divine Dr. Bailey. He would rest in Cloud Soul Palace for 2 days before returning to the Imperial Emperor residence. In the western part of Zhongzhou, in the Demon Imperial Court. In the depths of the Imperial Court, there was an exquisite and luxurious palace called the Bright Light Palace. This palace was newly built a few months ago. It was the palace of the Demon Princess. At this moment, in a spacious and bright room, there were 2 extremely beautiful and noble demon clan women sitting at a table and chatting. One of the women looked to be about 30 years old. She wore a moon-white long dress and exuded a noble and graceful aura. She was tall and slender, and she had long silver hair that reached her waist. There was also a diamond-shaped silver mark on her forehead. She was the Spirit Star Demon Empress of the Demon Imperial Court. She was also the birth mother of Kuan Wu and Ji Ku. The Demon Clan girl sitting next to the Spirit Star Demon Empress was about 16 or 17 years old. She wore a fiery red long dress. Her face was extremely beautiful, and her clear eyes were very lively. She was the Demon Imperial Court's princess, Ji Ku. The Spirit Star Demon Empress was holding onto Ji Ku's hand. She had an amiable smile on her face as she spoke in a gentle tone. Ku, you must have suffered a lot after cultivating in seclusion for over 2 months, right? Mother has prepared a few elixirs for you. Remember to take them later. Ji Ku nodded and said with a smile, Thank you, Imperial Mother. Although the cultivation was tough, my strength improved very quickly. I finally broke through to the Sky Origin realm. Mother, I haven't returned to Zhongzhou for almost half a year. I want to go and take a look. The Spirit Star Demon Empress nodded slightly and smiled gently. Of course, Mother knows that you miss your brother Kuan Wu and your brother Tianqing. Mother came to find you today to tell you a piece of good news. Ji Tianqing is about to get married, and the invitation card has already been sent to the imperial court. In 2 days, you will go to Zhongzhou to find your brother Kuan Wu. The two of you will go and congratulate Ji Tianqing together. As she spoke, she took out a red and golden invitation card from her wide sleeve and placed it on the table in front of her. The smile on Ji Ke's face had already disappeared. It was replaced by a stunned expression. Chapter 887. Originally, Ji Ke had been cultivating in the Demon Imperial Court for half a year. She had been cultivating in seclusion for a few months, ignoring everything that was happening outside. She had awakened a noble and powerful bloodline, and with the help of the heavenly net demon emperor, she had refined the mysterious demonic power in her soul. Therefore, her strength had improved very quickly, and she had broken through to the Sky Origin Realm in half a year. After reaching the Sky Origin Realm, she was filled with joy and excitement, and she could not wait to come out of seclusion. She only wanted to rush back to Central Continent City and see Ji Tianqing as soon as possible. However, she did not expect to hear this news on the first day she came out of seclusion. Ji Tianqing was getting married, and he had sent an invitation early in the morning. Ji Ke's emotions were very complicated, and her heart was filled with bitterness. She stared blankly at the red invitation on the table and looked at the big word "double happiness" on the cover. She did not dare to touch it. Silently, her big clear eyes were covered with a layer of mist, and sparkling and translucent teardrops slid down her cheeks. The Spirit Star Demon Empress did not notice her strange behavior, and she was still smiling as she said, "Ji Tianqing is the #1 genius of the human race, and his name is known throughout the world. He has been in the limelight for the past half a year. The girl who is worthy of him is naturally a genius of the human race, and she is the pearl of the Cloud Soul Palace, Yun Yao. Speaking of which, Ke, you should be familiar with Yun Yao. After all, the two of you were once from the same sect." At this point, the Spirit Star Demon Empress looked at Ji Ke gently. Seeing Ji Ke's dazed expression, the Spirit Star Demon Empress was puzzled. "Ke, what's wrong? Child, why are you crying? What happened? Quickly tell Mother." The Spirit Star Demon Empress reached out her hands and held Ji Ke's shoulders, asking her with concern. Ji Ke woke up with a start, and she quickly wiped the tears from her eyes. She squeezed out a smile and shook her head. "Mother, I'm not crying, I'm fine. I just suddenly heard this news. I'm happy for big brother Tianqing. Yes, I'm happy for him." Spirit Star's Demon Empress was an experienced person. How could she not see Ji Ke's abnormality? However, she didn't understand the situation, so it wasn't convenient for her to say anything. She could only hug Ke in her arms and say with a voice full of love, "Ke, my silly child." Sigh. Ji Ke lay in her arms. After a moment of silence, he suppressed the bitterness in his heart and calmed down. She raised her head to look at the Spirit Star Demon Empress and spoke with a calm expression. "Empress Mother, tomorrow morning, I will go to Central Continent City to look for Brother Kuan Wu. We will go together to congratulate Brother Tianqing." Spirit Star Demon Empress nodded and said earnestly, "Yes, that's what I should do. You must let Kuan Wu accompany you. Don't be impolite. After all, you are now the princess of the demon race. Your every word and action represents the imperial court of the demon race." Spirit Star's Demon Empress had vaguely guessed something and understood something. That was why she had instructed Ji Ke. However, Ji Ke was absent-minded and didn't listen to her words. He only nodded silently. Spirit Star's Demon Empress tried to persuade him in a roundabout way before leaving Zhaohua Palace. It was a silent night. The next morning, Ji Ke left the Demon Race Imperial Court alone. She climbed up the sky-soaring tower and used the mother-child sky-soaring shuttle to return to Kuan Wu's manor outside Central Continent City. There were many demon race guards and maids in the magnificent manor. However, Kuan Wu wasn't in the manor. Ji Ke asked the guards and found out that Kuan Wu had always been in the monarch residence. Thus, she asked the guards to report to the monarch residence and inform Kuan Wu. Kuan Wu only rushed back to the manor from the monarch residence in the evening. When he returned to the manor, he couldn't wait to rush to Ji Ke's residence. After seeing Ji Ke, he sized up Ji Ke and instantly revealed a gratified smile. Cuckoo, you finally came out of seclusion. I didn't expect you to break through to the sky origin realms so quickly. You're only 18 years old, and you've already reached the sky origin realm. You've even surpassed Big Brother. You're our race's #1 genius. Jika's exceptional talent and rapid growth shocked Kunwu, but he was also happy for her. However, Jiku wasn't in high spirits and couldn't feel happy at all. She looked at Kunwu and bowed slightly. Big Brother Kunwu, you're back. Cuckoo, what's wrong? Why are you unhappy? Kunwu walked to her side and sat down, asking with concern. Jika shook her head and forced out a smile. No, I'm not. How am I unhappy? Big Brother Kunwu, after I came out of seclusion yesterday, Imperial Mother gave me an invitation card and said that Big Brother Tianqing is going to get married. Kunwu smiled and nodded. That's right. Ji Tianqing is going to marry Yun Yao. The wedding date is set for the 9th of next month. At that time, they will hold a grand banquet in Central Continent City. This news has already spread throughout Central Continent, and the entire world knows about it. Cuckoo, Tianqing is your elder brother and Yun Yao is your senior sister. You must be happy for them, right? Jika nodded lightly and asked, Big Brother Kunwu, then can you accompany me to Tianqing Palace to see Big Brother Tianqing and congratulate him? Kunwu was startled and explained, Cuckoo, Ji Tianqing hasn't been in the Monarch Palace for the past 2 days. He seems to have gone to Cloud Soul Palace to handle some matters. You can stay here for now. When he returns to the Monarch Palace, I'll accompany you to see him. How about that? A hint of disappointment flashed through Jika's eyes. She didn't say anything and nodded in agreement. After that, Kunwu chatted with her for a while before bidding farewell and leaving. After Kunwu left, she also left the manor and entered Central Continent City alone. She secretly rushed to the Forest of Divine Monuments. She waited in the Forest of Divine Monuments for a long time before a few guards from the Monarch Palace arrived. She took out a letter and handed it to one of the guards. She asked him to pass the letter to Tianqing Palace. After the guards entered the Monarch Palace, she turned around and left the Forest of Divine Monuments. She returned to the manor outside the city and waited patiently. Unknowingly, for days passed. Ji Tianqing rested in Cloud Soul Palace for 2 days. His strength and mental strength had recovered to their peak. Only then did he leave Cloud Soul Palace and return to the Monarch Palace. He traveled alone and didn't bring his father. He let his father continue to stay in Cloud Soul Palace. On the 7th day of the next month, when he went to Cloud Soul Palace to marry Yun Yao, he would return to Central Continent City with his father. That evening, he rushed back to Central Continent City and returned to the Monarch Palace. He had just returned to Tianqing Palace when the guards at the gate bowed respectfully and took out a letter. Greetings to the Region Lord. Region Lord, here is a letter for you. Ji Tianqing stopped and reached out to take the letter from the guard's hand. He asked casually, who sent the letter? The guard reported truthfully, reporting to the Region Lord, it was sent by the guards of the Monarch Palace. It is said that the person who sent the letter is a young girl from the Monster Clan. Young girl from the Monster Clan? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows. He was a little puzzled and hurriedly opened the letter. When he took out the letter, he saw a line of beautiful words written on it. Chapter 888. When Ji Tianqing saw the small line of words on the paper, he immediately frowned and a smile appeared on his face. It's Cuckoo. She actually came back to Central State. Ever since he went to the Fey Imperial Court to borrow the Ice Dragon Hammer and unravel Jiku's identity, Jiku had been staying in the Fey Imperial Court. Back then, Kuan-Wu also told him that Jiku would have to stay in the Imperial Court for at least half a year to resolve her crisis and slowly refine the mysterious power in her soul. Now that half a year's time was almost up, Jiku should be back soon. That's great. Cuckoo came back just in time for Mai and Yao Yao's wedding. Ji Tianqing was very happy. After receiving Jiku's letter, he turned and flew towards the entrance of the monarch residence. The returning swallow forest mentioned in the letter was 30 li west of Central State City. It was a place with a lot of meaning. It was said that 1,000 years ago, when the demon race army was rampaging and conquering the world, the Western Wilderness Fae were the main battlefield. At that time, the Western Wilderness Fae were ravaged by the flames of war. Countless Fae tribes and towns were trampled into ruins by the demon race army. The brave warriors of Central State City, in order to protect their homes and resist the invasion of the demon race army, all rushed to the western wilderness to participate in the battle. Not only the Fey race warriors, but many righteous warriors and soldiers of the human race also rushed to the western wilderness to help the Fey race defend against the demon race's invasion. The flames of war continued, causing the world to be in chaos. The people had no way to make a living and countless people died. The brave warriors fought with their lives on the battlefield of the western wilderness, bathed in blood, but they could not contact their families in Central State. Even sending a letter to tell them that they were safe was an extravagant hope. Their families spent their days in worry. They would often look at the maple forest outside the western city gate, waiting for their loved ones to return in triumph. Over time, more and more families gathered in the maple forest, looking at the western wilderness and praying for their loved ones. Although the demon race army retreated to the northern desert after the chaos of the demon race was quelled, a portion of the brave warriors did indeed return in triumph and reunited with their loved ones in the maple forest. But most of the brave warriors died on the battlefield of the western wilderness, their heroic souls and loyal bones buried in other places. Thus, the ancient maple forest was named the Returning Swallow Forest. There was a beautiful meaning behind it. The families of the warriors hoped that their loved ones could return safely, like swallows returning to the forest, returning to their hometowns smoothly. In the 100 or 200 years after the chaos of the demon race ended, many people of Central State still went to Yen Returning Forest to pay their respects to the dead. However, in the past few hundred years, very few people had gone to Swallow Returning Forest. When Ji Tianqing arrived at Guoyan Forest, the sun was about to set. The dim sunlight shone on the maple forest, illuminating the red leaves on the trees. The ground also seemed to be covered with a layer of red carpet. Some people said that the red leaves on the trees and the dark red ground were dyed with the blood of the brave warriors of the past. They warned the future generations not to forget the chaos of the demon race and to be vigilant in times of peace. Ji Tianqing saw the red leaves and maple trees everywhere, but he didn't think too much about it. He quickly shuttled through the forest, his sharp eyes searching for Jike's figure. His heart was filled with excitement and anticipation. After 100 breaths of time, when he entered the depths of Guoyan Forest, he saw a graceful figure under a 2-meter-thick maple tree. It was a young girl with a graceful figure and a noble temperament. She wore a fiery red dress, her waist-length black hair draped behind her head. There was also a pair of small, fluffy golden ears on her temples. She was very cute. She was standing under the huge maple tree, quietly looking ahead. Red leaves fell from the tree and landed on her body, but she didn't feel anything. It was obvious that she was in a daze and had a lot on her mind. Although Ji Tianqing could only see her back, he could recognize at a glance that it was Ji Ke, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. Ke. Ji Tianqing quickly walked to the red maple tree and stopped behind Ji Ke. He called out to her with a face full of smiles. Ji Ke was immediately jolted awake. She slowly turned around and looked at Ji Tianqing. Just a moment ago, she had a lot on her mind and her eyes were a little moist. Now, her expression was normal and she even smiled happily. "Big brother Tianqing, you're finally here." Ji Ke responded in a crisp voice. She quickly took 2 steps forward and stood face to face with Ji Tianqing. Her clear eyes shone with joy. She looked at Ji Tianqing affectionately and couldn't move her eyes away. Ji Tianqing didn't notice anything strange. He reached out and pinched her cute little golden ears. He smiled and joked, "Ke, I haven't seen you for a few months. How did you grow taller again? Not only have you become prettier, you've also become stronger. You've broken through to the heavenly origin stage?" Ji Ke smiled and nodded. "Yes, I've been cultivating in seclusion for the past few months. I just want to reach the heavenly origin stage as soon as possible so that I can return to Zhongzhou and help big brother Tianqing." Ji Tianqing smiled and waved his hand. "Ke, I'm not in any danger now, and I don't have any strong enemies. I don't need your help. Besides, even if there's any danger, I'll do my best to deal with it. How can I let you take the risk with me? Even if I'm willing, Kuan Wu and your parents won't." He was joking with Ji Ke, just like he used to do in the past to make her happy. However, Ji Ke's smile was a little forced. She only nodded and didn't say anything. Disappointment flashed across her eyes, and she felt even more bitter. She thought to herself, even if I cultivate desperately and reach the heavenly origin stage, I still won't be able to help big brother Tianqing. I'll still be a burden. At this moment, Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Ke, you've come back at the right time. On the 9th of next month, big senior sister, and I will be getting married. When the time comes, you must come to our wedding. We haven't seen you for a long time, and we all miss you." As Ji Tianqing spoke, he noticed that Jike's expression was a little strange. Jike gazed at him with deep affection. Although there was a smile on her beautiful face, her clear eyes were covered with a layer of mist. He hurriedly held Jike's shoulders and asked with concern, "Cuckoo, why are you crying?" Jike hurriedly turned her head to look elsewhere, not wanting him to see her reddened eyes. She pretended to be strong and said, "No, I'm not crying. I'm happy. Big brother Tianqing, I'm happy for you, and big senior sister." Ji Tianqing was instantly amused by her. He reached out to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes and gently stroked her head with his palm. He smiled and said, "Silly girl, why are you still so silly? Why are you crying when you're happy for us?" Jike felt his concern and care. Feeling his gentle palm, it was as if they had returned to the past. She couldn't hold back the bitterness in her heart. She couldn't hold back her pretense of being strong and turned around to throw herself into Ji Tianqing's arms. She hugged Ji Tianqing's neck tightly with her arms. Crystal clear tears flowed out of her eyes as she cried bitterly. "Big brother Tianqing, actually the person I like is you. Can't you tell it all? Can't you feel it? You're going to marry big senior sister. Then what should I do?" Chapter 889. Ji Tianqing was stunned by Jike's sudden tears. He stood there stiffly and looked down at Jike. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Jike leaned on his shoulder and hugged his neck tightly, as if she was afraid that he would disappear if she let go. She lost her voice and cried bitterly. Her weak shoulders trembled, and in her big clear eyes, sparkling and translucent tears flowed down uncontrollably. She had enough time and patience to wait by Ji Tianqing's side and wait for him to understand her feelings. She had already waited for more than 10 years. She didn't mind waiting for another 10 years. However, she didn't expect that she would finally be qualified to stand by Ji Tianqing's side and help him solve his problems. When she came out of seclusion, she received Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's wedding invitation. Who could understand the pain in her heart? Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment. Then he opened his arms and hugged Jike. He patted her back gently and comforted her gently. "Silly girl, don't cry. I know you treat me well with all your heart and can't accept anyone else. But Cuckoo, I've always treated you as my little sister." Jike's body stiffened, and she slowly let go of his neck. She looked at Ji Tianqing with a miserable expression and took 2 steps back in a daze. She shook her head gently and said, No. Do you only treat me as your little sister? I don't want to. You are the one and only person I love the most in my heart. I don't want to be your little sister. I just want to be your wife and be with you until our hair turns white. Brother Tianqing, do you really not understand?" Ji Tianqing looked at Jike's dazed and heartbroken appearance. His heart clenched and he felt a stab of pain. "Cuckoo, don't be like this. Isn't it good for us to be like before? Don't worry. I treat you as my little sister. I will love you and pamper you as always. I will never let you suffer. I understand." Jike's tears flowed uncontrollably. Suppressing the stabbing pain of her broken heart, she tried to squeeze out a faint smile on her tear-stained face and loudly said, "Big brother Tianqing, thank you for being willing to love and pamper me. I wish you and senior sister Yun Yao happiness for 100 years." Jike's voice was choked with sobs. He forced himself to finish his sentence before turning around and running out of the maple forest. "Cuckoo." Ji Tianqing quickly chased after her and grabbed Jike's hand. However, before he could say anything, Jike broke free from his grip. Jike didn't even look back as she said in a pleading tone, "Brother Tianqing, don't say any more. Don't follow me. Please let me be alone." Ji Tianqing frowned as he looked at Jike with a complicated expression. His heart was heavy. He could feel Jike's heartache and despair, but he was powerless to persuade her. After all, he couldn't give Jike what she wanted. He could only stand there and watch as Jike left. Her frail and sad figure disappeared at the end of the maple forest. After a long time, he retracted his gaze and sighed heavily. "Sigh. Cuckoo, why are you so silly? What have I done to deserve you to be so devoted to me? I only hope that after today, you can calm down and slowly forget all these troubles. I hope that you can return to the innocent, lively, and cheerful Cuckoo of the past." Ji Tianqing didn't chase after Jike. This was because he knew that Jike was in a terrible mood. She really needed some time alone. With a heavy heart, he quickly left the yen-returning forest and returned to Zhongzhou City. Jike walked through the forest in a daze, allowing her tears to blur her eyes. Her heart was still very painful. Even the air she breathed in seemed to be filled with the coldness and bleakness of winter. She ran around aimlessly. She only wanted to find a place where no one could see her and cry her heart out. After an unknown amount of time, the sky gradually darkened and night fell. The forest became dark and gloomy. Waves of bird cries and beast roars could be heard from the distance. Jike ran to an ancient and weathered tree. She seemed to have used up all of her strength. She sat down under the tree with a dejected expression. She leaned against the ancient and rough tree trunk and held her head with her arms. She lay on her knees and quietly sobbed. The night wind was cold, but she didn't seem to feel it. After a long time, her tears had almost dried up. Her eyes were a bit red and swollen. Only then did she gradually stop sobbing. It was already late at night. There was no moon in the night sky. There were only a few stars that emitted a weak and dim starlight. She was still lying on her knees. She stared at the fallen leaves on the ground in a daze. At this moment, an ancient and powerful voice suddenly sounded in the night and clearly entered her mind. "Little girl, you seem to be very sad?" It was the voice of an old man. His tone was kind, and there was also a sense of superiority and majesty in it. Jike, who was in a daze, was suddenly awakened by this voice. She immediately raised her head and wiped the tears from her eyes. She looked around in confusion. "Who is it? Who's talking?" She looked around and realized that she was sitting under an ancient locust tree that was 100 meters tall. Under the locust tree was a broken stone path covered by fallen leaves. A black statue that was more than 10 meters tall stood 100 feet to the left. The black and ancient statue was carved of an unknown ferocious beast. It looked very ferocious and dignified. However, the stone statue had been eroded by wind and rain for countless years. It had long become mottled and full of holes. Not far behind her, at the end of the broken stone path, there was a temple that was half hidden by a large tree. However, the temple had been abandoned for many years. Most of the main door had collapsed, and the courtyard was overgrown with weeds. The beams, eaves, and pillars were also covered with cobwebs and dust. "There's actually a rundown temple deep in the mountains? How did I end up here?" Jike immediately frowned. She was on her guard. In the dark night, in the desolate mountains, there was actually an ancient and rundown temple. There was also that voice that came from nowhere. The atmosphere was a little eerie and terrifying. Jike vaguely felt that this was not a good place. She subconsciously wanted to get up and leave. However, at this moment, the dignified and kind old man's voice sounded in her mind again. "I can feel that your heart is like dead ashes. You're very sad and desperate. Tell me your story. Perhaps I can fulfill your wish." The old man's voice did not really exist. It was directly transmitted into Jike's mind. That voice contained some kind of special power that could calm a person's mind and soul, causing them to let down their guard and quickly relax. Jike was silent for a moment. For some reason, she stopped in her tracks and looked at the ancient statue not far away. She could sense that the old man's voice in her mind came from that statue. "Who are you? Why are you so mysterious? Why don't you dare to show yourself?" Chapter 890. Being questioned by Jike, the voice did not get angry. It chuckled as if it was mocking itself. "Who am I? It's been too long, and I've forgotten who I am. Perhaps I'm just a dejected god who has been forgotten for many years and is not worshipped by incense." Jike immediately frowned and said with a puzzled expression, "A dejected god who has been forgotten by people? Humph. Stop pretending to be so mysterious." She did not know much about the ancient legends, so of course she did not believe in gods and ghosts. The voice was still calm as it said indifferently, "Little girl, it's your fortune to be able to meet me. Since I'm a god, I have supernatural powers that mortals cannot imagine. It's fine if you don't want to reveal your inner thoughts. I can naturally know what you're thinking. I only have one piece of advice for you. Whether it's martial strength, power, or wealth, you have to work hard to obtain them. It's the same for love. If you don't think of ways to fight and snatch them, how can you win the favor of your sweetheart?" Jike's body stiffened slightly as she silently looked at the ancient statue. The benevolent voice said earnestly, "There's no hatred in the world for no reason, and there's no love for no reason either. If you want to capture your lover's heart, You have to take the initiative to fight for it and take practical actions. What's the use of crying? Even if you cry until your eyes go blind tonight, that person will still not feel the slightest bit of heartache. Upon hearing this, Jiku immediately shook her head and muttered to herself, "No, that's impossible. Big brother Tianqing is not such a person. He would not be so heartless to me. Moreover, he and senior sister Yun Yao are truly in love. They are willing to give up their lives for each other, no matter what. I should be happy for them that they can tie the knot. I will never do anything to destroy their relationship. I'm crying because I want to be sad alone for a while." The old man's voice suddenly became dignified as he scolded angrily, "Foolish. If you like him, you have to fight for it. If you love him, you have to say it. If you don't take the initiative to capture his heart, you will be sad and can only watch him accompany another woman day and night and be in love with each other." But Jiku was suddenly at a loss for words. Her emotions became extremely complicated as she silently lowered her head. The old man said again, "No buts. I just want to ask you, do you want to be with him, to be together forever?" Of course I wanna," Jiku answered almost subconsciously without hesitation. "Then do as I say. I guarantee that you will get what you want and your dream will come true." The old man's voice was sonorous and powerful. It contained an unquestionable dignity and an extremely strong soul-suppressing power. Jiku was caught off guard, and his soul power was weak. How could he resist? Her expression suddenly became dazed. Her clear eyes were filled with confusion, and her mind became a little blurry. Can you really help me fulfill my wish?" "Of course. I am a deity, omnipotent." The old man's voice was filled with confidence and majesty. Jiku's mind and soul were silently suppressed. He was bewitched by the invisible spiritual energy and gradually lost himself. Her reaction became a little sluggish, and she asked with a dazed expression, "Then what should I do?" The voice said solemnly, "You just need to close your eyes and imagine the result you want, the scene in your dream, and immerse yourself in it." Jiku seemed to be unable to control herself. She slowly sat down under the big tree, leaned against the ancient locust tree, and closed her eyes. Her expression was serene as she immersed herself in her beautiful fantasy. Soon she entered the dreamland. The surroundings returned to silence, and the night grew darker as if nothing had happened. After Ji Tianqing returned to the monarch palace, he sat in his room for the entire night. The incident that happened in the evening kept replaying in his mind. Jiku's heartbroken and tear-streaked face appeared in his mind again and again. His heart was in a mess. He felt both heartache and helplessness. At daybreak, he got up and left Tianqing Palace to rush to Kunwu Palace. "I wonder if Kuku came back last night. I hope she can calm down and stop being so sad. I have to talk to Kunwu later and ask him to help persuade Kuku." Although Ji Tianqing didn't know how to face Jiku, and it might be awkward if they met again, he was still worried. His heart was full of worry. He couldn't feel at ease until he saw Jiku. Not long after, he flew to Kunwu Palace and landed outside the main gate. After he explained the purpose of his visit to the guard led him into Kunwu Palace. He sat in the guest hall for a while before he saw Kunwu, who was wearing a white fox fur coat, striding into the hall. The two of them exchanged a few words when they met. He went straight to the point and asked, "Kunwu, did Kuku come back last night?" "Kuku?" Kunwu was startled and asked doubtfully, "Wasn't she always at Xingyu village outside the city? Did you meet her last night?" Hearing him say this, Ji Tianqing knew that Jiku didn't return to the monarch mansion. She most likely went back to Xingyu village. He frowned and said to Kunwu, "Kunwu, send a message to the people of Xingyu village. Did Kuku go back last night?" "Tianqing, what happened?" Kunwu realized that something was wrong and had a bad premonition. Ji Tianqing said with a serious expression, "I can't explain it to you for the time being. You send the message first." Kunwu didn't say anything else. He quickly took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to Xingyu village outside the city. After he sent the message, the two of them sat in the main hall and waited in silence. After about 7 minutes, a spiritual light flew from the sky and landed in front of Kunwu. Swoosh! The spiritual light flashed and a communication jade slip appeared in Kunwu's palm. He quickly used his spiritual sense to check the information in the jade slip. After reading it, his expression changed and he frowned. The people of Xingyu village replied, "Kuku left Xingyu village yesterday afternoon and never returned." Suddenly hearing this news, Ji Tianqing's expression immediately changed and a deep sense of worry arose in his heart. "Oh no! Kunwa's expression also became serious. He was full of doubts and worries. He quickly asked Tianqing what happened. What happened to Kuku? Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment. He could only explain to him. Yesterday evening, Ke asked me to meet her at Guiyan Forest outside the city. He gave a simple explanation of what had happened. After hearing this, Kunwu was even more worried. He said anxiously, Tianqing, how could you leave Kuku alone? If something happened to her? Ji Tianqing was full of bitterness. He said in a low voice, how could I follow her in that situation? Forget it. It's my fault. I'll go and find her now. After that, he bowed to Kunwu and stepped out of the main hall. Wait, I'll go with you. Kunwu quickly followed him. He said as he walked out, I'll send the order to send the guards of Xingyu village to find Kuku together. Chapter 891. Ji Tianqing and Kunwu left the monarch mansion and rushed to Guiyan Forest outside the city to search for Ji Ku. After receiving Kunwu's order, the demon guards of Star Moon Villa also rushed to Guiyan Forest and started searching the surroundings. From the time the sun rose until the afternoon, the group had been searching for 6 hours. With Guiyan Forest as the center, everyone searched the area within a 500-mile radius. In the end, it was Ji Tianqing who found Ji Ku. When he found Ji Ku, it was near an abandoned temple deep in the mountains. Outside the abandoned and dilapidated ancient temple, there was a broken stone road covered with fallen leaves. On the left side of the road was an ancient black stone statue, and on the right side was an old locust tree that was 100 meters tall. Ji Ku was lying under the old locust tree, leaning against the rough tree trunk and sleeping peacefully. This unknown ancient temple was hidden deep in the mountains and had not been visited for many years. If Ji Tianqing had not been careful and used his spiritual awareness to detect Ji Ku's aura, it would have been difficult to find this place. After he found Ji Ku, he saw that Ji Ku was safe and sound. There were no injuries on her body and her life force was very stable. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. However, he called out to Ji Ku several times, but he could not wake her up. Not long after, Kunwu also rushed over and landed under the old locust tree. Like Ji Tianqing, he saw that Ji Ku was safe and sound and felt relieved. However, Ji Ku's eyes were still closed, and she was in a deep sleep. She did not react to anything around her. Kunwu saw that something was wrong and quickly shouted, Kuku, what's wrong? Wake up. However, it was useless. Ji Ku was still in a deep sleep. Kunwu turned to look at Ji Tianqing and asked in a worried tone, Tianqing, what's going on? How did Kuku become like this? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a solemn expression, I don't know what happened to put her in a deep sleep. I can't wake her up no matter what. As he spoke, he carefully observed his surroundings and used his spiritual sense to explore the ancient temple not far away. In the end, everything was normal. The old locust tree, the ancient stone sculptures, and the abandoned and dilapidated temple were all normal. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He then said in a deep voice, Kunwu, we can't stay here for long. Let's take her back to the monarch mansion first. She's in a deep sleep, and the situation is a little strange. Let's go back and slowly find out the reason. Kunwu naturally nodded in agreement. After that, Ji Tianqing carried Ji Ku into the sky and flew back to the monarch mansion at lightning speed. Kunwu gave the guards of Star Moon Manor an order, and quickly followed Ji Tianqing back to the monarch mansion. Nearly 2 hours later, the two of them returned to the Tianqing Palace with Ji Ku. Ji Tianqing carried Ji Ku into the secret practice room and put her on the ice jade bed used for healing. Then he used his spiritual sense power and used the Suxing Dharma eye to carefully observe Ji Ku to find out the reason why she was in a deep sleep. Kunwu stood aside and looked at Ji Ku anxiously and worriedly, waiting for the results of Ji Tianqing's investigation. After a quarter of an hour, he saw that Ji Tianqing had finished his investigation. He quickly asked Tianqing, how is Kuku's situation? Why is she in a deep sleep? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a solemn expression, I've carefully checked her body. There's nothing wrong with Ku's body, and she hasn't suffered any injuries. It's like she's asleep. Then why is she in a deep sleep? There must be a reason. Kunwu was worried and said anxiously, Tianqing, let's ask the god teacher to take a look. All right, I'll go and ask god teacher Blackfeather now. Ji Tianqing had the same idea and agreed without hesitation. He flew out of the Tianqing Palace and rushed to the Black Feather Palace personally to ask God Teacher Black Feather to treat Jiku. 2 hours later, he brought God Teacher Black Feather back to the secret room. Jiku wasn't the prince of the monarch mansion, so God Teacher Black Feather could ignore him. However, he thought highly of Ji Tianqing and used the Divine Soul Secret technique to treat Jiku for Ji Tianqing's sake. He stood beside the ice jade bed and used the Divine Soul Secret technique to release a dense white light that enveloped Jiku. Swish! The Divine Soul white light contained a special mysterious power. Soon, he figured out Jiku's situation. God Teacher Black Feather withdrew the Divine Soul white light and turned to Ji Tianqing. He said with a serious expression, "Tianqing, Jiku isn't injured and her life isn't in danger at the moment. However, her soul spirit is in a deep sleep. It seems like she is in a dream and can't wake up. That dream originated from the depths of the soul spirit and can't be awakened by normal means. We can only enter her dream and try to wake her up." Hearing God Teacher Black Feather's words, Ji Tianqing and Kuan Wu's expression changed and revealed a worried expression. Kuan Wu asked worriedly, "God Teacher Black Feather, what will happen if Kuku can't wake up?" God Teacher Black Feather said calmly, "Then she will be in a deep sleep in the dream forever and lose herself. There won't be any difference between being alive and being dead. No, we can't let her sleep like this forever." Ji Tianqing shook his head and asked God Teacher Black Feather, "God Teacher, how can we enter her dream and wake her up?" God Teacher Black Feather thought for a moment and said with a serious tone, "I have mastered an ancient divine soul mystic technique called Black Dust Dream. It can help you enter her dream. However, only the people closest to her and the people she trusts the most can enter her dream and have the chance to wake her up. However, no one knows what her dream is like. If you enter her dream recklessly, there might be unexpected dangers. If you want to wake her up, it's best for you to discuss carefully who should enter her dream." Ji Tianqing and Kuan Wu looked at each other and said in unison, "Let me do it." After saying that, the two of them went silent for a moment. Kuan Wu quickly explained, "Tianqing, I am Kuku's brother. She left us not long after she was born. We owe her too much. I won't let her suffer any harm. Let me complete the task of waking her up." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a serious tone, "Kuan Wu, this happened because of me. I have to solve it. Otherwise, I won't feel at ease. I hurt Kuku's heart. Her dream is most likely related to me. Therefore, it's more suitable for me to wake her up." But Kuan Wu was still worried and wanted to persuade him. However, Ji Tianqing said with a firm tone, "No buts. It's decided." After saying that, he turned to look at God Teacher Black Feather and said with a serious expression, "God Teacher, you can start using the mystic technique." God Teacher Black Feather nodded slightly and said with a serious expression, "Tianqing, since you have decided to enter Jiku's dream, you have to remember one thing. Her dream might be grotesque. No matter what you see, don't be confused. It's all an illusion. No matter what danger you and her encounter, you have to stay alive." You're tuning in to the Bli Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.